YouTube.
Have fun. Let's hope it doesn't immediately delete you.
All right, I am live.
I should be. If anyone who's watching, which we've got a decent amount of viewers, can you just let me know if YouTube's working? Because, yeah.
Please, God, someone help.
If YouTube is, and it just like glitches out completely, and you can't even see if they're telling you.
It happens a lot, believe me. But yeah.
Streaming on YouTube stressed me out. That's why I stopped doing it.
Shoot me your links once you guys are sure it's live. I'll just send it over to my Discord and see if anybody else might want to join in.
Cool. Let me just get that from my phone. Are we up and running, guys? Because it says excellent connection, but I'm not too sure. Once we're waiting on that, we can see you. Okay, cool. Right, everything works.
Sounds great.
All right, so let's not waste any time so that this will be easier to edit and upload in various places. Hello, everyone. LoremasterOfSotek here, and it's time for this week's episode of Lorebeards. We finally did it, guys. 2 weeks in a row on the same day. It finally happened. Only took us like 6 tries.
Yeah.
Real quick, as always, got Nathan here with us.
Hello.
My lovely co-host, and we have another special guest. This week, we've got Royu. If you would be so kind as to kind of introduce yourself and give everyone like a little bit of background on who you are and what you do.
Of course. Hey guys, I'm Royu. I'm a concept artist and illustrator from Hong Kong. I'm probably most well known in the Warhammer fandom because I do Warhammer 40,000, like Warhammer 40k webcomics. I do a bunch of 4-panel comics for the Warhammer community, including Roommates, Big Brothers, and Chaos Undecided. So I'm most well known in the Warhammer community for that. But more relevant to what we're talking about today, I also do concept art, fan concept art for Cathay and Kuresh. I did the Cathay stuff by myself, and I'm working with Furious Ming, who also did Cathay fan art, and we're working together on the Kuresh fan project, designing units in the context of Total War Warhammer. Yeah.
So you guys have seen their work like everywhere at this point. Like Reddit is
hopefully.
Yeah, and Royu also did that absolutely amazing quick picture that I have that will one day be a thumbnail for a video, supposedly.
One day,
according to myths. But yeah, he's here today mainly to not only talk about a lot of really, really cool stuff that he's been working on that we're really excited to show y'all, but also to do we're going to be talking a lot about Cathay because they were finally revealed this past week, which was super duper exciting, and already feels like it was 1,000 years ago, but it was just a few days ago. And he's going to help us kind of understand a lot of the direction that Creative Assembly chose to take with it as far as what the inspirations were, and maybe where it's going in the future, and maybe give us some insight on what we can expect for the things that haven't been revealed yet.
I will be your professional Chinese person.
He's going to be our guide. Yep. Because we are going heavily into unexplored lands as far as
and pronunciation.
Yes.
I need help with that.
Don't worry, I'm good. I'm fluent in Cantonese and Mandarin, so I'm good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm super duper excited for this. But before we get into the really spicy fun stuff, we do have a couple of things to take care of for housework. So we've got our Tale of Two Gamers update for this week. So for those who have been following along the podcast, 2 weeks ago, Nathan kind of assigned us all a hero, and I think everyone did a great job except me and Nathan panicked. We were struggling to get in there.
Yeah.
But we both do have one.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and go first here. So for me, I've got my Spirit Torment.
Ooh.
So I don't know if my camera's going to focus on this guy, but this is
You
one of
have
my
a
heroes.
still picture?
A what? Oh, a still
still
picture. Yes,
Yeah,
I could
that
do
might
that.
be more useful.
That
Yeah.
would be more useful, wouldn't it? Nathan, here, I'll just show other ones until
I put it on the.
I get a picture uploaded.
I put it on the Twitter feed too.
Yes. Oh, you do. Actually, it makes it even easier. So let me pull up that. So we're going to go through all the quick just to show off all the models that people submitted, which is super duper fun. So starting with Nathan, he's got us I don't even remember what this guy's called. The Slaanesh Lord.
Yeah, so he's one of the new Slaaneshi Lords that were released for the Hedonites, and I've got him on a square base because I want him to be one of my champions. He needs a little bit of work because it was like last minute painting, but I think he looks good in a square base. He fits really nicely on a 25mm base. I think he's a Lord of Pain. Is he a Lord of Pain?
Yes, Lord of Pain. That is the correct answer.
These are all
One of
Age of
those-
Sigmar models, right? By the way.
Yes, because Age of Sigmar just has really sexy minis at the end of
Yeah,
the day.
they really do.
A lot of the fantasy minis are kind of showing their age at this point. But yeah, he looks great, dude. You turned out really well. He's got a really shiny. What metallics do you use? It's almost got like a. It's got like a really nice. Fuzzy's not the right word, but I also like that you did a
The
blood effect on
texture?
this. Yeah. The texture on the metallics is really interesting.
The metallic is it's I can't remember the brand, but it's a special. It's what I use for my car. Funny enough, for the whites, because I undercoat in white and then I use contrast in some cases. So I quite enjoy using a white undercoat and then just painting over that. But the gold itself over it is Liberator gold, which I think is just a really pretty gold itself.
I would describe that texture as pitted.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
But
All right.
like it.
Moving on to the next entry. Oh wow, these are cool. Wow. Okay, so we've got a picture of Oni for a Nipponese army that someone looks like they've custom made. Wow, these are not only very well painted, but are just super badass looking minis.
Yeah.
Are these
Okay.
kit-bashed?
I have no idea.
This is Rowan's. This is one of my Discord moderators.
Rowan the Accused.
He goes well out when he starts doing his armies. He's been working on a Nipponese army for a while, and like you can tell, he gets really into his army stuff.
If you're able to get a hold of them, we would love to know if these are kit bashed or like a print from
3D
somewhere.
printed.
They're a print. They're a print. Rowan's in my chat
Yeah,
at the moment, so maybe he can just.
Yeah, I actually think people would love that file, especially in my community. All right, so up on mine, I just uploaded mine, so the pictures aren't super amazing quality, but I've got some pictures here of my Spirit Torment. So he's actually holding still. But this guy is super duper important for my Spooky Ghost army, and he was actually my first experiment using some nitric oxide on the metals to kind of give them a aged or kind of rusted look. But still working on those gradients, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
I love the mini.
Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous.
As the 3D artist, like the sculpting work on the Age of Sigmar minis, they're so good. Like I love doing my own sculpts, but like I have no idea how to arrange them in such a way that they look this good still necessarily. Yeah.
All right, from Marcus here at Ranger Markai, we've got a Highland minis to make a questing night with a gorgeous terrain piece.
Oh.
wow. The basing on this alone is incredible, but the mini itself is also gorgeous. Like there's a skeleton like crawling out of the ground behind him. The basing on this is absolutely incredible. Like it's even got a Bretonnian symbol here in the front. I'm assuming he printed this or sculpted it himself, but well done, Marcus. That is impeccable.
Really cool.
What is that at the bottom? Is that flesh or flowers?
I think it's flowers. Like one of the little sprock flowers that you can buy that you stick them onto the base. A lot of hobby stores sell those, but this one is like a very dynamic piece. I would be fairly intimidated to see that throwing across the table at me.
That is really cool.
Here we've got from Denevere he's painting his first army, and we've got here, looks like he's doing Stormcast Eternals, and he's got a Lord Imperatant with accompanying Griffhound. So looks absolutely lovely. Congrats on starting your first army, dude. I wish you the best of luck with it.
First army, and he's going for whites. That is impressive.
Yeah, I actually, especially for a first attempt, the detailing he did on the cloak on the first picture to get like the blues in those lines and then the little tabards and stuff, he did a really, really good job for a first attempt.
Yeah.
So keep it up, man. Keep it up.
I wonder if that's free-handed. That's probably free-handed, right?
That's gotta be. That's gotta be free-handed. Next up, we've got a classic. We've got a metal old school Gracier Thankful.
Hey!
And he looks just as spectacular as I remember back when Skaven and so many other races were very squat. So just a really lovely blast from the past mini. But what this guy does very, very well, which is something I really, really struggle to do, is his edge highlights are super duper on point, especially on that dagger, where the raised edges are actually a lighter color than a different color than the actual blade itself to give it like a really, really nice appearance. And I've been trying to do that, and it's been a struggle. It has been a struggle. But yeah, he did an absolutely great job. And of course he did the bead dot for the eye without accidentally spreading red everywhere. This man knows how to control a paintbrush.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got another spook. We've got the what is she called? The Briar Queen. We've got the Briar Queen in here from Goat Force. Tactical Sign is there in chat. You just dry brush that? Well, it looks great for a dry brush. This actually looks like it turned out super duper well. This Briar Queen model did a really, really good job with all the flowers and stuff, but the getting her to have that spectral ethereal look looks absolutely fantastic. I'm assuming that you used diclic oxide. Because it really settled into those recesses super duper well. So great job on that. Next up, we've got from Todd K, we've got a Skink Star Priest, a nice classic mini, and he's on a square base. I approve.
Yeah, 10 points for that.
Wonderful job on that, my dude. Looking good. Lots of golds and blues, and went with all those pinks and purples for the flowers.
Love the color choice.
Yeah, it's a really the feathers are a really, really nice standout there. From Florian Naradio, we've got green skins. We got Gloom Spike Gits. We got a Dankhold Trogoth, big old model with just a ton of stuff going on. There's so many like mushrooms and all sorts of other stuff going crazy. We've got a Squig Rider. The character version, and then we've got the Snazgar Stink Mullet, or I can't remember what the actual model's name is, but it looks really, really good.
Question: did the detail bits come with the model? Like on the troll?
Most of it does. Some of those, I'm not entirely sure about the pumpkin-looking mushroom on top. That's the only one that is a little suspicious. to me as far as like I don't remember that being on the kit, but most of this stuff is part of the actual minis.
I love the textures.
Yeah, he did it looks really good. He did a really good choice with the coloration. Like everything pops really nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks almost has like a fairy tale look, except it's trying to kill you.
Yeah, I think my favorite bit is the blue millipede creature that's coming off the shaman's staff. But the colors are really bright and poppy, which is unusual for Gloomspite, but looks really, really good. Like it almost it kind of looks like Alice in Wonderland popping out to kill you. Oh yeah, and here's another picture of his Dinkled Trogoth. I think that's all of them on the Twitter feed, but I do have a couple extras here that were submitted on the Discord. So we've got an Ogre Tyrant that was submitted and looks awesome. It's such a busy model. Like it's got little heads all over the place. It's just got he's got so many little trophies around his model. This is the newest Tyrant model that was released in AOA. And man, it shows because he's just an absolutely amazing, kick-ass looking model.
The composition on the Age of Sigmar models are really good.
Yeah, and then we've got this just stupid, well done, like gobsmacked, well done. I'm assuming this is a I think it's a Frostlord on Thundertusk, but like, god damn, this thing is insane. There are gradients everywhere. The face looks absolutely perfect. The fur looks great. All the little he's got a custom base, which is a giant glacier, and you can see footprints in the snow.
The gradients are also executed really well.
Yeah, like just looking at the Thundertusk's horns, how it like goes from that a normal kind of ivory bone color all the way down to almost a deeper gray, super duper naturally. Like, damn, absolutely damn. And like all these little bits of like armor that have been attached to the Thundertusk, where you've got like metal and scale and all this stuff. Like, good absolute grief. This is god tier. This is absolute god tier. So thank you very much to everyone who submitted. We really, really appreciate that, and it's fun being able to share our painting suffering with you guys. So Nathan, for the next 2 weeks, so next time on Tale of Two Gamers, what will be the theme?
Well, we've done a character, so why not a troop choice so the character has something to lead?
Okay, so just so not a monster, but a unit. Doesn't matter what kind of unit, just a unit.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with, because funny enough, I was just looking at them now. I've got a bunch of stuff here because I was trying to cut out some pieces. Chaos Warriors, but I'm going to go with filing down the shields to give them a Soneshi look and give them the armored helmet from the Hellstriders, because I have a bunch of Hellstrider helms where I haven't used them. So I want to see if I can do 16 warriors.
Nice. That means I can cheat and pick the unit that I'm not done painting, but I'm still working on. I can finish my chained rasps. Wonderful. Okay. All right. So everyone, you got 2 weeks to submit hashtag Lorebeards on Twitter, preferably, but you can always throw it into our Discords, and we will be checking those out. And this time's theme is a unit. It could be any kind of unit. It does not have to be. It does not have to be infantry. It does not have to be cavalry. It could be, as long as it is a unit. Just because some armies don't have a lot of options if we narrow it down more than that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be Warhammer Fantasy. Just a reminder, or AOS. It could be 40K. It could be some other company. It could be whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me that. I work for Games Workshop.
All right. So that is it for Lorebeard. So the last thing we have to do before we hop in with all the super exciting conversations about Cathay and all that crazy jazz is this week's Who Would Win, which for once I actually thought of and didn't go scrounging around Discord to find. So because he has been popping up everywhere, he has just been super crazy popular with the new Cathay trailer. We're going to be having Kairos Fate Weaver go up against none other than Lord Mazdamundi. And of course, we're going to have these two big boys going all crazy on the magic fight, but they're going to be showing up with all of their little things. So Mazdamundi will be riding Zlak into battle. That way, Kairos doesn't have the ability to just fall on him from the sky and squish him. But so we're going to start up some in chats while we discuss this.
Okay. Flying cat. Okay. Who would win? And
all right, and I'll grab a little book here real quick so we can kind of talk about the characters in depth for a second.
that should be live now, I hope.
Yep, live on mine as well. So, starting with Lord Mazdamundi, we do have the eldest of the living Slan, a true powerhouse in his own right. A character that, for his feats, they're mostly magical in nature, though he is noted to not mind getting his hands dirty, with Zlak charging into battle and just running people over, which does afford him a good amount of protection and makes him rather formidable in melee. As far as what he brings into the battle when it comes to, say, items and stuff, the big things that Mazdamundi relies on, of course, are the Cobra Mace, which the Cobra Mace of Mazdamundi is this kind of stick he carries around that, in the lore, it's actually kind of a super amazing weapon in that it can literally come to life when someone tries to attack Mazdamundi. And what it does is it's this freakishly fast serpent made out of gold that will lash out and it bites other people's weapons to shatter them. So if someone tries to attack Mazdamundi, even if it's particularly if it's a magical weapon, his weapon comes to life and bites it and shatters it in order to protect Mazdamundi from any potential attacks. But it also
This is melee, right?
Yes, this
Only
is a melee thing. Yeah, he doesn't
Okay.
he doesn't whip it across the battlefield.
Right. Like it doesn't
it'd be
work
cool
against
if he
like
did.
ranged. It doesn't work
Yeah, no.
against like arrows or whatever.
You know, he won't be like slapping Marcus Wolfhart from like across 50 football fields.
Oh, he wish he could.
Yeah, he wish he could. And then, of course, he also has the Sunburst Standard, which the Sunburst Standard actually will not help him terribly much in this particular matchup. It basically, he's got this big old banner that sits on the back of his palanquin that that just shines literally with the brightness of the sun, which can make him very, very difficult to see and target with shooting weapons because he's blinding you. For anyone that's made the mistake of staring at the sun for as long as you can to prove how cool you are. But into this battle, he does, of course, bring a just crazy amount of lore. He is a master of all of the winds of magic. And while he does not tend to necessarily have every single spell ready to go at any time, being a Slan, he's used all of these spells. And he has an active ability to switch between them freely in the midst of a battle. So he'd be casting one spell and think, you know what? No, I need this other spell instead. And his mind is just constantly revolving around and being a revolving door to answer particular scenarios. He, of course, does have geomancy, which allows him to do a lot of really cool things, like literally rip open the earth to make people fall inside and then slap it back together again. But against Kairos, that's not going to help because Kairos, of course, is airbound and likes flying around like the little goofball that he is. So those are kind of the big things. And of course, Mazdamundi does have his palanquin protecting him. So he does have this kind of invisible aura of magical protection that's going to try to keep him safe from Kairos Fate Weaver. and he does specialize in, of course, using and dispelling enemy magic. But on the other side of the equation, we've got none other than the big two-headed goofball himself, Kairos Fateweaver. So Kairos, of course, is the mightiest of the Lords of Change. When it comes to magical sense, he's actually weaker than most Lords of Change. When he was chucked into the Well of Eternity by Tzeentch, because Tzeentch wanted to know what happens throughout all of time, but didn't want to risk his own skin, Kairos had his physical body really messed up, which gave him two heads, but also made it where he can see the future. He can see all possible futures, and he can see the past without it being shaded by perspective. But he cannot see the present. His future vision is kind of limited in that he could see all possible futures, but in a battle type scenario, because he could see everything that could happen, it could be difficult for him to see which exact one is going to happen, which leaves him vulnerable. It's more of a situation that when he's in melee, it causes him problems. But if Kairos is forced into a melee scenario, he has a really bad time because he can't see what's going on. So he can't parry very well, and he struggles to hit people because he doesn't know where they're going to be. And he's also physically weaker than most.
He's physically weaker than Lords of Change.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not. He's more fragile, and he also does not hit as hard. But he is still a greater demon, so he's kind of up there with he's stronger. He's about on par with beefier monsters like trolls or minotaurs or large ogres or croxagors. He can hit about as hard as they can, but he's miserable at dealing damage in combat because he can't see where he's swinging. He's very slow at swinging, and he gets physically he just gets overwhelmed very quickly. So he's got to keep this to a magical battle. However, just like Lord Mazdamundi, because he's the Oracle of Eternity, he can see all possible futures. He is very good at avoiding getting absolutely smashed by people. And he has the Staff of Tomorrow, which the Staff of Tomorrow is basically he has his big old staff that he carries. Do it a very limited amount of times in a battle type scenario, and he can only do it in very subtle ways. It's not like he can just change fate so that you fall into where he knows there's a pit and he just finds the one future where you just didn't realize there was a pit there and you fall in and die. It's not quite that extreme, but he can he can try and alter things to make things work out better in his favor. So those are our matchups. Kairos, of course, knows a assload of magic. Kairos' whole thing is that both of his heads know the lore of Tzeentch, and then one of his heads is a master of the lores, 4 of the battle lores, and his other head is the master of the other 4 battle lores. So here we have a ridiculous showdown of 2 characters who are honestly equally tough. Mazdamundi, Zlak does give him a notable defensive edge because Zlak, of course, is very, very tough, and Kairos will probably not want to fight the giant pissed off dinosaur in close combat. It's not going to end well for him. But they both are afforded quite a bit of magical protection, and they are both super wizards. Both of them are able to obliterate armies and have done so in the lore. It pretty much comes down to, can Kairos keep away enough? But let's hear y'all's thoughts on this idea so far. Nathan, what do you think?
I don't know. Both of the characters are quite strong. I'd have to say, if it comes to favoritism, I'd probably go for Kairos, because you'd think a character like that, if he knows he's coming up against Mazdamundi, would plan ahead. Obviously, the advantage of flight and being able to move fairly quickly does help. Though, I don't know, Mazdamundi does hit quite hard too. I was looking at it from a tabletop perspective. Mazdamundi kills Kairos, no problem. But then if you look from a fluff perspective, possibly Kairos could, if he keeps moving constantly.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for Kairos has a absurd advantage in maneuverability.
He's way more mobile.
Yeah, being able to fly is huge because obviously Zlat cannot get to you if you're not on the ground.
Yeah, I feel like the real question is how long Kairos can actually stay in the air. Like if he can manage to keep out of the way of Mazdamundi's spells long enough to he just stays up there indefinitely, he probably wins, I feel like, because he can see into the future, right? So he has a much better advantage at dodging Mazdamundi's spells than Mazdamundi has from dodging his spells. So on a range perspective, he's probably also, I don't know in terms of their magical defenses who would hold out longer, but assuming relatively similar defenses, if has greater mobility and ability to dodge from afar, I feel like he would win in a battle of attrition.
When it comes to defenses, Mazdamundi has a slightly higher edge when it comes to stopping magic. He's got a little bit more of an expertise in that. But Kairos has a stronger expertise in casting magic. So they kind of equal out there. And as far as actual defenses go, they're fairly evenly matched. They're both about equally resistant to being killed. They both can take about an equal number of hits if you could get to them. And their barriers, like Kairos's ability to see fate and dodge things, is about equivalent to Mazdamundi's Shield of the Old Ones. So in a pure attrition fight that just keeps going, I do think you have an excellent point in that Kairos has a much more favorable position in that he will have a better time being able to just focus Mazdamundi as opposed to the other way around.
Also, in terms of rules, the shield is about equal to his ability to see into the future, but in terms of fluff, he can see into the future indefinitely, but the shield won't last forever.
Yeah, that's kind of the tricky thing about the Shield of the Old Ones. Is the Shield of the Old Ones is sort of this barrier afforded by the Palanquins that it does have limitations. There are, it can be penetrated, it can be worn down if it is put under too much constant fire. The thing that I think, for me personally, I think the big thing for me comes down to would Kairos be able to stay airborne long enough to kill or disable Zlak? I think for me that's the big thing, because as long as Zlak is alive, Kairos is boned the instant he goes down.
If Zlak reaches melee range, he immediately goes down.
And Mazdamundi does have interesting options in that with magic, there are ways that he can literally just make Zlak fly. There are ways he can bring Kairos down to the ground. Oh yeah, there are spells to do that. Unfortunately, they don't use them until the war, but they exist.
Mazdamundi would have access to the lore of high magic, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he specializes in high magic.
The fluff he could, for sure, I guess.
Yeah. High magic, you can fly.
Yeah, and plus he is a master of geomancy. There is a lot to say that he could literally. I mean, we've seen Mazdamundi raise a literal entire mountain range, so maybe he just creates himself a mountain. It's like go charge. I've actually seen a stupid scene like that happen in a Black Library book where a wizard used magic to to a highway up to a flying thing to attack it, which was hilarious. But
screw you and the mountain range you rolled in on.
Yeah, but there are also spells that could shut down Kairos from flying. There are spells that disable flying because if Mazdamundi summons a storm that it's just this giant storm that's not particularly aimed at Kairos. It's just a big storm that makes flying physically impossible, especially because Kairos is physically weaker than most Lords of Change. He could be forced to be grounded. I mean, if you could see all possible futures, that's great. But if if all of a sudden you're in a hurricane, you kind of get down on the ground. Because demons do have physical bodies when they're fighting in the physical world. So if they get hit by lightning or something, they are going to have just as bad of a time. So for me, I think it honestly comes down to, could Kairos's magic kill Zlak? And I think if the thing with Kairos is there are spells that could kill Zlak, but only from the neutral lores, the ones that Mazdamundi is very intimately familiar with, and would know, like, I need to make sure these don't go off. And Mazdamundi, I think, would be able to prevent that. The lore of Tzeentch is, I think, where Kairos would really have his strength, because Mazdamundi doesn't know what's going to happen. And quite frankly, to an extent, Kairos is probably not going to know what's going to happen, because that's the whole point of the lore of Tzeentch. But the problem with the lore of Tzeentch in this matchup is that the lore of Tzeentch almost entirely relies on, they shoot these different colored flames at you, and basically Tzeentch fire does not burn you. Instead, what it does is it tries. No, it's not. It's not an actual fire. It just looks like fire. What it does is it mutates you. So depending on the color of the fire, it has different effects. But the general gist is that it will try to. It basically like causes you to get super cancer, or mutate tentacles that start strangling you to death, or
the question is that kills Slack fast enough.
Yeah, but what I was gonna say is the problem though with the lore of Tzeentch and how it mutates is that the tougher something is, both physically and mentally, the more resistant it is to be mutated. And Zlak is like one of the toughest sons of bitches that the Lizardmen have. And when it comes to mental fortitude, a Stegodon is the most stubborn piece of garbage son of a bitch on the face of the earth. Like, they just don't care. They are incredibly willful creatures, and they get even more like, I don't give a damn, I'm too old for this shit the older they get. And Zlak is the oldest Stegodon we know of, at I think he's like 500 years old or something.
Did he live indefinitely?
Stegodons, maybe, I don't know. They don't. It's a little wishy-washy.
They probably haven't specified, honestly.
Yeah, like we know Carnosaurs can live for incredibly long times. Grimlock has been alive as long as Krokar has, and Krokar's been around for like 9,000 years.
Yeah,
of course.
So I think for me personally, I think that I'll hear y'all's answers first. So kind of with everything we've talked about, Kairos does bring superior maneuverability. He does have the ace up his sleeve of the lore of Tzeentch can be unpredictable, and he could get lucky. And if he manages to depending on like how the fates are doing with him, he could pull some really good shenanigans there. He could also, but he is, I would say, a more reliable caster than Mazdamundi. He will have an easier time unleashing spells that are very, very powerful. But on the counter hand, Mazdamundi is better at countering magic, and is a specialist in every lore, just like Kairos is, with the exception of the lore of Tzeentch, which he doesn't know. But Kairos also does not know the lore of high magic, so that kind of equals out. So it kind of comes down to, can Kairos bombard Mazdamundi hard enough to kill him, or at least bring down Zlak so he can go finish off Mazdamundi in melee, or at least get close enough and just keep kind of pressing him to take him down? Or do you think that Mazdamundi would be able to figure out a way to get into melee and allow Zlak to kill him?
I think a lot of this depends on how prepared they are for each other, right? Like, if Mazdamundi knows he's facing...
So for who wins, we always... The important assumption is that they're fighting on a neutral battlefield, so there's no advantages in terrain, but any kind of terrain can show up. Yeah. And there's no preparation. So, like, they're just teleported into an arena, and it's a death fight. So Kairos' future vision would only start to work once he arrives.
Yeah. Nathan, you want to go first?
It's a bit tough. I mean, I'm looking at it from a tabletop perspective. So it's like, the Stegodon's getting too close. Quickly cast Flesh to Stone, make myself more durable, and so on, So there are ways that he can kind of combat against the Stegodon coming to him if it happens. I'm still going with mobility. I'm still going Kairos. I still think that being the fact that he can see into the future and he has access to the same laws as Mazdamundi, we know those laws are quite powerful themselves, he should, in theory, be able to outdo the frog.
In terms of lore, can we assume that Mazdamundi is familiar with with Kairos?
Yes, they actually have fought before in wars.
Right. Okay.
Kairos was the leading general during the Lustria invasion in the
No,
Great
that makes a lot
Cataclysm.
of sense. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, at first I was definitely leaning towards Kairos because of the mobility, but if Masamundi can make Slack fly, I think he has a pretty good chance. Uh, yeah, I think you've successfully talked me over onto Mazdamundi. Yeah, I think Mazdamundi on a 60% chance winning, I think, if he can get Slack flying or like cripple Karas's mobility, definitely he would win. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm no surprise to anyone. I'm siding with big old Mazda Mundi. I actually think there's the spell in the lore of high magic that literally makes people fly.
There is.
That would not surprise me.
It makes you ethereal, and you can teleport. I think it was 20 inches across the board.
Yeah, so I could definitely see, but I think they both have an incredible amount of tools.
Yes,
but I think the thing is that Mazdamundi has a much easier to achieve win scenario than Kairos does. Because Kairos's win scenario is that I have to either overwhelm the Shield of the Old Ones through just pure magic firepower, but I'm also going up against one of the best anti-magic wielders in the world. There are a few characters who are as gifted at stopping magic. And Kairos is also, I think, more likely to miscast than Mazdamundi is if they're both going all out. Because Mazdamundi
there's also that element of randomness to his offensive abilities.
Yeah, the thing with Kairos is that while he could tweak fate a little bit to make his magic, like he could use his staff, the Staff of Tomorrow, to influence reality so that like when he's unleashing his spells, he's getting more favorable results when that randomness for like the mutations and stuff is going out. But I think Zlak would be able to take enough punishment for the spells that slip past, and I think the Shield of the Old Ones would hold out long enough for Mazdamundi to be able to force Kairos into a fight. And like to put it into perspective how bad Kairos is at fighting, Mazdamundi is a superior melee combatant to Kairos Fateweaver.
Wait, for real? Like
yes.
Oh my god.
Like Mazdamundi is more skilled at wielding a weapon, and his weapon is very fast and venomous.
That's true. Yeah, it is a magic weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, and if he could get close enough, there's actually there's not a impossible chance that the Serpent Staff would actually shatter the Staff of Tomorrow if he could get close enough. So, like, Kairos cannot get into melee, and that's just such a broad number of scenarios. Whereas I think if Mazdamundi was by himself on his Palanquin, where like he just would not have the ability to overwhelm Kairos in melee. Like if he got Kairos into melee, he would be able to hurt him, but he wouldn't be able to kill him. Whereas Kairos could just keep repositioning and shooting him. But for me, I think Zlak is the game changer. And that Zlak is easily tough enough to go up against even the beefiest Lords of Change. And Kairos is Kairos is like in the Chad Virgin meme. Kairos is on the other side, even though he's the best wizard. But I could see it either way. Like I could see the absolute argument that because Kairos has access to all the lores that he does, that maybe he would just bide his time and keep working on potential futures where he's able to cast a spell that could kill Zlak instantly. Where he's like, Pit of Shades. Or
it's just that Mazdamundi has a more immediately achievable win scenario.
Yeah, that's what it is for me as well. All right. So, my poll vanished. But I know on my poll, chat voted, I think it was 64% in favor of Mazdamundi. What'd you get, Nathan?
How do I check this? Oh, here we go. 49% for Kairos Turkey, and Big Mazda gets 51.
Okay. All right. So I'm pretty even split in the chats. Mazdamundi does come out a bit ahead, though.
It's a good matchup.
Yeah, it is a good matchup. And hopefully we'll have many more in the future. But it's now time to get into the real meat.
Right.
today's conversation. So
why you invited me here.
yeah, so for anybody that's been living under a rock, I mean, really, Cathay was revealed this week. For the
I
first
think it just
time,
hit over 1 million views.
oh yeah, it's dude. You know how I know that it's super popular? I had a friend over yesterday, and she does not give a shit about Warhammer. Like knows basic like most all of my friends. Like nobody knows anything about Warhammer. They're like, oh, Ryan's talking about work. Great.
IGN and all the big press, gaming press sites, they shared it too. So
oh yeah.
Well,
IGN steals every trailer in existence for some reason.
They do.
I don't know how they get away with that, but they do.
I mean, that's probably the only way they're still alive at this point.
But I was talking to my friend, and I was telling her about the Cathay trailer, and it was super exciting and stuff. And she was like, "Oh, that's cool." And like, she's like, "You know, I'd love to see part of it." And I showed her a picture of Miao Ying. She's like, "Wait, I've seen her. Like, I've seen that picture going around." And I was like, "That's how you know we've made it big."
I showed my friend, and they were like, "Oh, Dragon Mommy."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Miao Ying is fulfilling everybody's wish list for Christmas this year. Yep. All Timmy wants for Christmas is to get stepped on by a dragon. That's all he wants. Yeah, there's been a lot of spicy art of Miao Ying, despite the fact it's been less than a week.
I should not be surprised. I have no idea why I'm surprised at all.
It is. There are certain subreddits that are very busy right now. But getting more back on topic before we get demonetized. For all of us, this was an incredibly exciting day. Because we are stepping into a world we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. There's never been art, official art. Royu. There's never been official art. We have beautiful unofficial art from certain kinds of amazing artists. And we also, the lore was...
technically do have official art from the roleplay books.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, the 4th edition.
Yeah.
But they only kind of count, like...
Yeah, there was edition, like recent. There was that one. Is it a more recent edition where they had emissary from Cathay? I believe.
Yes, we actually talked about that on Lorebeards. I think the first or second episode. So the 4th edition fantasy has been leaning very heavily back into the older editions, which has been good and bad. It's been good in that they're exploring the actual world much more. So we're getting like art of Cathay, we're getting art of Araby, we're getting art of all these different places. But it's also been bad in that, like, Volkmar the Grim is no longer canon the roleplay. Yeah, Volkmar's not a character. He's been replaced by some random dude. And Karl Franz is from... I actually got some new books I've been reading through, but Karl Franz is seemingly being played as a villain, which I'm not a fan of.
No.
But we'll see. And it's because they're following the Shadows of the Empire campaign. Like, that's the main push behind Warhammer Fantasy 4th Edition is a campaign, a very long campaign series from 2nd Edition Warhammer or 1st Edition. Do you remember when the Enemy Within came out?
2nd?
I think it was 2nd. Yeah. But it's like 5 volumes, and every volume is like, or actually no, I think it's more than 5, but it's colossal. The last one is about to come out for 4th ed, but they basically like reworked it for 4th edition. But because they're basing their lore around it, like the Empire is very, very different, as are other aspects of the world, which I'm personally not a fan of, but to each their own. Anyway, once again, back on topic. So we're going to be talking a lot about Cathay today and all of the different things that have been revealed. And Royu here is going to help guide us through what the inspirations were. Because when I look at Cathay, I see a lot of beautiful things, but I have no understanding of it. It's just like, oh, this is cool.
And they are pulling from a fairly wide range of like Chinese imperial eras, so it does take a little bit of getting used to if you have no idea what you're looking at.
So, Nathan, do you have any starter questions? I think I'm just. Why don't you start us off, and I'm gonna pull up some stuff.
Just to mention, I also have our Kuresh team on Discord right now, and they are awake and listening, so I can call upon them if I do miss something.
Beautiful. Well, that is the next. That's on the docket.
So-
We're gonna go through Cathay first.
I have a
Sure.
question regarding what are those? Well, in my mind, they are Pegasi, aren't they? In the trailer.
No. Well, okay. That it's been officially like they they had like a few army names from I forget which publication, but they've been confirmed to be Longma.
Right.
Like so Longma are I was when I first watched it, I was like, wait, are those I'm not sure what those are. And then I looked it up. I was like, okay, no, yeah, those are Longma because they're more Longma is like literally it means dragon horse.
Oh, okay.
And it's
Accurate.
not
Accurate.
not as popular. It's not as popular a mythical creature, so it's more obscure, but it does play basically the role of a Pegasi in terms of like physical attributes.
Yeah,
So, you know.
because I saw them and it threw me off because obviously I was expecting the Keeling, which were used in both Cathayan and Nipponese army books back in the day.
Kirin is the Japanese pronunciation. The
Right.
Chinese pronunciation is Qilin. Well,
Keeling.
I mean, it's the anglicized version, but yeah, Qilin is the Chinese version.
So-
You can say Kirin, I'm just saying.
So yeah,
Right.
I actually saw a lot of people thinking they were Chilean as well.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through what are those and what is the difference between them and the Longma?
Well, okay. The Qilin, I'll just say the anglicized version so it's more consistent.
Yeah.
Also, I have to say, in case I make a mistake or misrepresent something, I am like not like a huge historical buff. I mean, I have a general understanding of mythology and whatever, but please don't crucify me if I make a mistake. And if I make a pronunciation mistake, it's probably because I have like the Cantonese and Mandarin versions in my head at the same time, and sometimes I mix those up a little bit. But
Yeah.
yes.
Well, everyone in chats should be behaving themselves and not being assholes, so there should be
Oh,
nothing to worry
it's
about.
fine.
Chat.
I'm just like, in case
Chat.
another Chinese person is watching, I'm like, I know I might make a mistake every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, if there's
but
one thing
yeah.
I've learned about history, it's that like you put 5 historical fans in a room and they can all be experts on the exact same thing and ask them something about it and you'll get 5 different answers. So
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but so basically they're both okay. So both Qilin and Longma are like Qilin and Longma, they herald good fortune basically, like a lot of Chinese mythological creatures that are positive. They basically herald great things to come and good fortune.
Yeah.
Like honestly, that's pretty common in a lot of mythologies. In terms of physical differences, that's probably the most obvious. The Qilin is more of number one, it's got antlers, and number two, it definitely doesn't have wings. So they basically, most depictions, they sort of just glide around and fly around without having wings. And I assume that's probably why they didn't use them for the basic cavalry, because they probably look a lot more magical and powerful than the Longma, which do have wings. They're basically winged horses with dragon scales, so
Yeah.
they look more down to earth, and they probably fit better for like a general cavalry depiction.
So yeah, like I'm looking at the screenshot right now, and like they look pretty damn cool. Like I like the look of it. I'm assuming by the way that you've described it, you'd see them as like the Bretonnian Pegasus Knights in a sense, like in terms of usability in battle.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, like judging by like Warhammer, probably honestly, like they're not going to be using like the mythical powers and whatever.
Yeah, and like we have actually seen in an article, I think that was released by, I'm probably gonna mess this up. I think it was Game Express, that their official title is they are the Great Jade Longma Riders.
Yeah,
Cool.
that makes sense. Yeah,
But
also of note, I would like to just note that both Longma and Qilin are linked with Chinese emperors because, well, like I said, Longma is like dragon horse, and dragons are basically the symbols of the emperor and the imperial family,
Mm-hmm.
and Qilin are also heralds of like a good ruler, right? So like there's if you see a Qilin, that means like there's like a great period of prosperity to come, and the emperor is a good ruler. Yeah.
That's
So they're
cool.
both linked to the imperial family.
Right.
All right, so yeah, because that's definitely a unit that like immediately stirred up a whole bunch of conversation until everyone figured out what they actually were, because everyone was like,
It threw me off. It really threw me off. I must admit though that like I love the look of them. I really, really do.
I'm gonna have to look up more close-up screenshots. I've only seen the big the
I
battle
have
scene
one.
ones.
Yeah, I have one pulled up here on my stream. The screenshot that we were provided because we were provided with some screenshots from Grave Assembly,
Oh, okay.
which has like a really nice up close shot where you can kind of see like the underbelly is like those larger scales that we kind of associate with the underbellies of
All right, this
dragon.
is yeah, I've seen this one. Yeah.
I actually really really like their wings. They almost like while they are dragon wings, they almost kind of have like a butterfly look to them because they have like a sparkle effect. It almost it gives them a very almost ethereal quality, which I really like.
Usually in a
Man,
lot
those
of
rider. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Like in traditional drawings of them, honestly, the wings are not usually that prominent. So you could probably do anything you like with them, like in terms of the stylization of whether to go like bat-like, dragon-like, or like feathered.
Well, it's still Warhammer Fantasy, so they kind of have to make it a bit more out there. I mean, I like the look. I'm dreading painting them in the future if models ever come out for these.
Oh, they will.
I have issues painting wings like really badly. Always.
I actually just noticed that the riders don't have saddles.
Oh, yeah.
They're riding bareback, which, considering the amount of armor they're wearing and that they're holding shields and spears, that's super impressive and also terrifying.
Could that be a work in progress thing?
Yeah, it might be work in progress. I don't know. Maybe they'll have a thing about how like they don't. Maybe they're such good riders they don't bother with saddles or something. But like, good lord. So this image I think is actually a really good one for kind of focusing on certain units and discussing them. So I want to talk. I think for the next thing, I'd like to hear your opinions about. Obviously, a lot of us in the West are familiar with what these are likely based on, but maybe you'll have some more details for us. Is the what are your thoughts on the Terracotta Sentinels?
Terracotta Sentinels? I mean, obviously they're based off the Terracotta Army. In Chinese, it's called the Bingmayong. Bingmayong in Cantonese. I would say. Okay, I can talk about it from an artist perspective and from a cultural perspective. In terms of a cultural perspective, they look fine. I mean, like, it's fine, but they just don't. Okay, it's a bit hard to talk about. Let me go for the aesthetic look first. Okay, in terms of my opinion as an artist, I like how they look, but I wish they were a little bit less textured. I find because they are like giant statues, right? I wish they went for a more like sculpted look instead of like the armor looking like lamellar. How do you pronounce that? Am I pronouncing that right? Lamellar armor.
I think so. If I understand what you're referring to correctly.
Yeah,
it's a bit steampunk. Is that what you mean?
No, it's like it looks more textured than I would expect a statue to look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a bad look. I just wish there was like a little bit more focused, because it does sort of like muddy up the sort of like overall composition a bit. But it does look very cool. In terms of a cultural look, it obviously takes a lot of cues from the traditional depictions of like Guan Yu, aka Guan Yu, the god of war from Three Kingdoms,
Mhm.
because especially with the big guando the guandao that it's holding, so it's taking a lot of cues from like depictions of like Chinese generals in that sense. But have you guys ever seen pictures of a terracotta army in like the actual terracotta army in China?
Yes, at least here in the States, it's a really popular thing to know about.
Right, right. Yeah, I've actually been there in person. They're pretty cool. And actually, they used when they were unearthed, they were actually painted, but the paint actually evaporated after like a while, so because they weren't
Ah,
preserved
bummer.
correctly. Yeah. Um, so obviously the Terracotta Army is from the Qin Dynasty, right? So they have a more ancient and they're from the Qin, the closest period that you guys might be able to like parse. It would be like it's the like Three Kingdoms takes place during the Han Dynasty. The
Mhm.
Qin Dynasty takes place right before the Han Dynasty. So it's from about that ancient era of like like 2000 plus years ago, and the armor did definitely look a little bit more primitive and simple back then, and I sort of wish they had gone for a similar vibe, honestly, to make it look more ancient and sort of statuesque, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it kind of seems like with the Terracotta Sentinel, they took a more um, uh, they went with a more fantastical approach than they did with
Definitely.
many of the other aspects of the army, and especially when they light up.
Mm.
So like when they're active, and you have like it has a cool effect, but I think as you kind of said, it came a little bit at it came at the price of maybe a more authentic design, because it looks like the reason they made them so incredibly busy was to give them that um, almost like a they almost look like they're hollow and there's some kind of giant fire that's
Yeah,
been lit inside,
it
which
does
is a
look like
cool
that.
effect. But
Yes. It looks
because of
almost like a
that,
furnace. It looks like
yeah,
a
they look like a living furnace, which, as you mentioned, is a cool effect, or as we've talked about, very very cool effect. But it does make them very busy.
Mhm. I also wonder if there are actually smaller infantry versions, because if I remember correctly, in the old, was it Storm of Chaos or whatever, the old there was like an old campaign or whatever that talked about the Chaos forces attacking like the Cathay's outposts, and they had mentions of terracotta soldiers, and those should have been about infantry height, I believe. So I do wonder if there are smaller versions of that.
I don't
Yeah, so
know.
actually, it was in the Tarmacon supplement.
Right. Yes. Tarmacon.
So in
I forgot
Tarmacon,
about
there's a really big fight between one of the baddies leading a whole bunch of beastmen and Norskins and Chaos Mammoths and stuff against Cathay. That supplement's a little infamous because I think actually I can't remember if it was you I spoke to or someone else about it, but the weird thing was that the creator who wrote it seemed to base most of his designs and thoughts off of
off
he had like a couple of,
Japanese stuff.
yeah, it was mostly Japanese mythology with
But
a couple of Chinese things
to be
sprinkled in there.
fair, a lot of Japanese mythology comes from Chinese mythology, so you can
Yeah,
find roots in Chinese mythology if you
yeah,
wanted to.
he had a really big obsession with crowmen. Crowmen were
The
like one of the
Kuku,
big,
yeah,
yeah, were one of like the big features of the battle, along with like firework cannons and a bunch of other stuff. But
Well, earlier Warhammer Fantasy Lore, and if we go back to second and third, we did have units that were interchangeable by both Cathay and Nippon.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I would not be surprised to see infantry terracotta soldiers. I think I'm expecting it only to be the Sentinel
yeah.
right now.
Honestly, realistically, probably, but I do wish there was like an infantry version.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
do you mind if I quickly send you some of the art I did, because I did
yeah,
do
go
my
ahead.
own version of terracotta.
I
Well,
would,
not
I would.
Sentinels, but terracotta infantry. Here,
Oh,
I sent it to you. So I'll just quickly talk about my personal concept for it. My concept for it was that basically they were like funerary rites. So as you can see, I have like little pagodas on the shoulders. I intended those to sort of like be like incense holders. And then if you look at the gorget, what would you call it? The neck piece design. That is actually a traditional Chinese tomb design. So
that's
traditionally, like it's the open semi-oval, like in the middle, that would be like where you put like incense, where you would put like offerings for your ancestors, and on the two sides, like the names of the buried people are there, and I also have like the funerary plates as like sort of like a skirt around his waist. So that was my personal concept for them. I thought it would be really cool if like, oh yeah, the terracotta soldiers are like monuments to like fallen soldiers from and then they have like a statue dedicated to them that comes to life to fight for Cathay. That would be super cool.
Yeah, and you know, a thing that I actually really like about this that I think ties into what the Total War design missed a little bit, though I think there's a reason for it. I'll address in a moment. But the thing that I really like about your design that I feel the Creative Assembly one missed a little bit was that this ties back very and neatly to the fact that the terracotta soldiers in our world, to my understanding, are a funerary, or they're part of a tomb.
Yes, they are basically representations of the army of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor, when he was buried. Like basically, like instead of like actual, well, back in the day, they actually sometimes did bury like actual people with the emperor because, you know, the emperor, you can do whatever the hell you want. But yeah, so instead of burying the entire army, they buried a representation, like a live representation of his army. Like apparently all of them are modeled on actual soldiers in his army, and they were buried with him as like to escort him into the afterlife, or like to like as his army in the afterlife.
Yeah, so I think you captured that really, really nicely. And that's something that the Furnace soldiers kind of missed out on. But the Furnace soldiers seem like they kind of took it more in a direction of like these giant magical things that are the Sentinels. You know, they're guardians that you know, people would be used to as being part of their villages or towns that come to life as these big kaiju defenders.
Yeah, they're very cool for sure. It's just like a less of a specific reference to the actual thing they're based off of.
And I think the big thing, at least as far like this is what I'm thinking was where they were in their headspace, especially because they had Games Workshop kind of looking over their shoulder, as far as like what they wanted everything to look at, is that I think when it comes down to it, they may have felt. I don't necessarily agree with it, but like I said, I kind of see where they're coming from. I think they may have felt that a lot of the funerary or death iconography would make them too similar to the Tomb Kings.
No, for sure.
And that the Tomb Kings are very big on like, we have giant constructs that are more simplified, and they're all about death. Like everything's about death and funerary and all that stuff. Dead. Yeah, like that's it. Like Tomb Kings are literally just Egypt, but only if they worship death. So I'm the part of me that thinks is that when they were looking at it, they were like, okay, we want to give Cathay terracotta something, but we don't want them to be too similar to Ushabti. We don't want them to be too similar to the Hydra Titan and the Bone Giant. So what do we do here? And this seems to be where they landed.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just it's a little sad that they couldn't add like a little bit of extra flavor to them. I mean, maybe in terms of like maybe when Games Workshop comes out with more lore, they'll have like a more specific niche in terms of like their theme. But right now, yeah, it's like I am missing a little bit of like extra spice. They're cool, but there could be a little bit more. Yeah.
All right. So, do we have any thoughts on this mystery piece, the giant green lantern I have pulled up on chat or on the channel, which from what I have read seems to be, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but the Wuxing War Compass. I've seen a lot of debate on it. From what I've been reading on Reddit, and this could, like I said, I was literally reading off this Reddit, so if this is wrong, forgive me, folks. But from what I've been reading, apparently the word Wuxing can refer to like the concept of the elements, like the five elements.
It's Wuxing. Yeah.
Wuxing. Okay.
Wuxing. Don't worry about it.
I'm trying. I promise I'm trying.
He's giving up already.
Listen. If you keep trying, supposedly eventually you'll get it. So I'm gonna keep trying. But
lot of work. But
do you have any
definitely-
thoughts on if that may even be remotely accurate? Is if this war compass, because the compass was invented in China, or at least was like one of the
Well,
major.
I don't know if like globally it was invented in China, but the compasses are counted as one of China's 4 great inventions. So it was definitely developed locally in China. It was not passed to China in terms of like our knowledge about it at least. So there are like so it's like one of the inventions of like the Yellow Emperor, which is like a probably mostly mythical first king / emperor of China.
Oh, someone in chat actually just said something really cool that I didn't even think of. Mirage Fire says maybe the war compass refers to the winds of magic, because the winds of magic, there are 8 winds, and they kind of have a cardinal direction because there are 8 of them, and there are 8 directions.
Right.
So maybe it refers to that giant ball with that green energy in it. Maybe is a device that allows the Cathayans to manipulate and control the winds of magic.
Let me first break down what the wuxing is. Okay, first
Yeah, please.
of all, obviously I am not like a practicing Taoist, and I have like just like a general knowledge of what Taoism, like what their doctrine and beliefs are, from like general cultural osmosis from like movies and books and whatever. So if I get it slightly off, please don't crucify me. But basically, the wuxing are what you might most commonly know them as are the 5 Chinese elements. So do you guys know what the 5 Chinese elements are?
Nope.
I had a brief idea of it, but like I'm drawing. a
Does
blank.
it at least have earth, wind, fire, water as 4 of them?
No. Oh well.
Damn.
It doesn't have air. So the 5 Chinese elements are fire, water, wood, metal, and earth. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with that concept. I know a fantasy
yeah.
series that definitely stole that.
It's Chinese based, they definitely stole it. So the wuxing, they're not elements necessarily in the same way that the Greeks recognize elements as, because in Taoism a lot of stuff is like really conceptual and sort of like one thing is not only the literal thing that they are. So like if you're talking about like elements as most people know them as in the Western world, elements are like this is literally fire, this is earth, this is water, whatever. In Chinese and Taoist philosophy, the 5 elements are sort of like phases or expressions of reality, and they are philosophical concepts that lead into each other and are interconnected and are representations of facets of how the world interacts with each other and what the world is. And that is a lot of philosophical stuff to talk about on a lore podcast, but it is a sort of like really conceptual thing, and it's a little bit hard to break down in a easy to understand way. Yeah. And
okay. Any thoughts on how that might apply to this piece?
Right. So I was gonna say in terms of the 8 winds of magic thing, they're not directly. So there's another concept in Taoist philosophy called the bagua, which are like, God, this is getting complicated.
I'm loving this.
Hey, we love complicated here.
I'm loving this.
Another system of breaking down how the world works, and it's like 8 different phases and 8 so like it's all like symbolic and stuff. It's like there's like this is how we understand the world, and the bagua is like one of the way. There are like 8 ways that you can break the world down, and they all interconnect. And then the wuxing is also another way that you can break the reality and existence down into like different phases and interactions between the material world. And they are sort of connected in that they all relate back to the core what Taoism is, right? So what Taoism is that there is a Tao, which is the fundamental flow of the universe, right? It is basically what the universe is and what everything leads back to. And everything in reality leads back to the Tao. So basically, how Tao is mostly interpreted as is the Tao leads into through a couple of phases. It leads into yin and yang, yin hao yang. So like yin and yang are the two fundamental facets of what the Tao is, and then the wuxing, the five elements, are like further reflections of that, breaking it down into like more easily understood like segments of reality.
Okay.
And so if you're talking about like, oh, it's a wuxing compass, like it's like it could, I don't know how that would relate back into the winds of magic, but it probably is like manipulating reality on some level if they're using magic to manipulate the wuxing.
Interesting. So, do you think it would be more likely then that maybe because it doesn't appear to have any kind of riders or like warriors on it. It seems to just be like literally a giant lantern with 8 little dragon heads on each cardinal direction that is full of some kind of magical energy that's just being pulled by horses.
Absolutely possible. I mean, honestly, at this point, we don't know how deep they are getting into like the Taoist references. So, like, they could honestly be anything, right?
Yeah, but based on what you said, I almost wonder if it might be that it's some kind of, so instead of interacting with the 8 winds, maybe instead it might be something that is a support piece that either enhances or buffs in some way the harmony system.
I feel like that's probably the way to go in. Yeah, because like we know, all the Cathayan units have like access to like the yin and yang harmony system, right? And the wuxing does lead back into like creating harmony and balance each element leads into the other and interacts with each other on a like differently, but basically it all comes back into like a cycle basically. So it would fit into the theme of like creating harmony within your art.
Yeah, and so for anyone unaware of kind of what we spoke of there, just to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page, we have had reveals in various articles and like the FAQ page and all this stuff about how Cathay has a mechanic known as harmony, which the harmony mechanic is kind of their overreaching mechanic for their faction, just like how the Dark Elves have murderous prowess, the Tomb Kings have the Realm of Souls, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And what it sounds like is it almost sounds like a defensive version of the Norskin's Berserker rage mechanic. But instead of it being you throw yourself in combat, and the longer you're in combat, you build up buffs, instead sounds like it's a system where the Cathayan units have to be working in a certain system with each other. Like your melee units probably being in melee or being in front, your ranged units being protected, shooting from behind, but like keeping a harmony within your army through
sort
their
of like based, I think.
Yeah, through like your who knows whether it's going to be stances or whatever you're doing, but you build up harmony and it provides certain kinds of buffs for your army. So that's kind of what we're talking about with that, in that it sounds like it's going to be a system that very heavily rewards very considerate and balanced play, which is something we don't really see right now in Total War.
Well, it's next to impossible in this current Total War iteration.
Well, you could do it, but you're doing it at your own detriment if you're not cheesing the hell out of everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we dragged Legend of Total War in here, he would have some thoughts on that. So who knows? Maybe Cathay will be the anti-Legend of Total War army. CA finally found a kryptonite bullet for him. But speaking of that, from as far as like pulling from taking Chinese mythology and history and putting them into Warhammerifying them, which is much more almost complex of a system than just mystifying, because to Warhammerify something, you have to make everything associated with war, and it also has to be able to deal with all of these other cultures that have gone through the same process. How do you feel about the focus on yin and yang and harmony and the direction they're taking with Cathayan's battle tactics?
Okay, just quickly jump back to the previous topic because I actually had a thought while you were talking,
Sure.
if you don't mind. Because to add on back into against the sort of like the using the compass to manipulate the winds of magic in order to cast spells. I think an important point if you're considering Chinese mythology to consider is that the Chinese interpretation of magic is not quite the same as the Western conceptions of magic in traditional terms. So like if you ask like a Westerner, oh yeah, what is magic? So like they'll tell you, oh yeah, it's like a wizard. They throw fireballs and then they do like transformation spells or they summon things. Chinese mythology, magic doesn't really work that way most of the time. I mean, I guess like in theory they could do those things, but it's more about manipulating your own chi and it's manipulating the energy of the world, right? So it's either a more invisible kind of magic or it's more of an internal kind of magic. So that's probably why they have like a sort of like yin and yang magic for their casters for Cathay instead of the standard like Winds of Magic casters. Though maybe they still have that, I have no idea. So because like how they express the magic is more either internal or subtle, and you at most you get like shape shifting or whatever. So that could be a good indicator towards the compass not being magic casting.
Yeah, I almost
unit.
wonder. I almost wonder if the reason they call it a war compass. I wonder if it like absorbs the winds of magic, but then transmutes the winds into this other form of energy that Cathay prefers to use.
That would be very interesting. It would be like you can like spend your winds of magic for like active buffs, and you have to choose between different kinds of buffs or debuffs.
Yeah,
that could be
actually,
interesting.
I could see that being really fun. Of being like, okay, Cathayans don't interact with the winds of magic in a traditional fashion. You know, they
As much problem.
as
I'm
much.
sure they probably use it in some.
But like maybe the celestial dragon, you know, the dragons taught them how to take these chaotic 8 winds that are unnatural to the world and make it into a natural force that they then use to like physically buff themselves.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah, but so back to the harmony and the yin and yang as far as that being the core fundamentals behind the war design, the battle design of Cathay. What are your thoughts there?
Well, okay, in terms of like overall aesthetic, right? Or like just like, are we talking aesthetic or theme?
Or whichever you prefer.
Okay, in terms of aesthetic, I am enjoying it so far. In the Kuresh team, we've been like speculating about what the Cathayan units would look like for a while, and we discussed that we were really glad that it didn't look like the Qing Dynasty armor designs for a few good reasons. Because would you like me to like go more in depth about this stuff?
Oh, go ahead.
As in depth
please.
as you want.
So, if you don't know, the Qing Dynasty is the most recent dynasty. Like it lasted up until like the very early 1900s, until it collapsed, and then the nationalists took over. So the Qing Dynasty is what a lot of Westerners might be most familiar with in terms of imperial Chinese designs, but it is also not very representative of traditional Han Chinese designs, because the Qing Dynasty was actually established by the Manchus or the Jurchens. They're established by a minority ethnic group, and for the vast majority of Chinese history, the Chinese dynasties have been ruled by the majority Han Chinese ethnicity. So we were thinking like it's sort of stereotypical. It doesn't necessarily represent as much of the general breadth of the Chinese history. So we were glad to see that it wasn't going for the stereotypical Qing designs, and which we were a little worried about because like mentioned, the emissary from the role-playing Warhammer role-playing was using very specifically Qing design motifs. So we were really glad to see them go in the other direction and sort of like look through more of the Chinese history to get inspiration for the design.
Well, my theory regarding the why the emissary had a Qing design is because Cathay geographically in the Warhammer universe is so large. They've probably got inspirations from different dynasties to different
for sure.
sections of the country itself.
Yeah, we were definitely we have no issue with like Qing dynasty designs. It's just like we're glad that it's like they didn't use it for the overall aesthetic, you know?
Yeah, I mean a little variety in terms of design and stuff is cool. One thing that kind of pisses me off about the Empire is everything looks like a Reiklander.
Yeah,
right.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately,
Warhammer.
That's
take
just
everything to 11.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunately just the limitations of the video game. I think is that it just the effort to make the Empire really have like distinct
a cohesive aesthetic.
Just get the shoes off the Sterlanders. Just take the shoes off.
But it's like, yeah, like hope I would just hope that we get like at least one DLC that gives us some interesting looking non-Reiklander stuff. Like a lot of us I know are hoping for Middenheim or Midland at some point.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of hype for Boris.
Yeah, Boris and White Wolves and all that stuff. But do you now that we're kind of on it, as far as the aesthetic goes, how are the thoughts about what they did decide to use? So we know we have the Jade Warriors, which are they're the like medium tier infantry that have the big face thing in front of their face, and then we've also got the
how to classify that as? It's like a neck lock. I
don't know what the term for it is, but I've seen it in other I've seen it before in like fantasy armor and stuff. But so we got those guys, which I'm 99% sure are the Jade Warriors. They've got those big, their armor like comes up in front of their face. We've got the Celestial Dragon Guard, who are the guys that are just decked in armor and have the super fancy shields, and they also have like the really nice plumes and stuff. And then we've got we have seen I assume they're not called peasant infantry. I don't know what to call them, but they have the pointed round hats. They've got like the wide brim pointed hats. So what are your thoughts on the designs of the infantry and the soldiers that we're seeing, particularly the melee variants?
I like them. I mean, we are basically going into fantasy, right? And unless you're going for like a very cohesive, specific reference to Chinese history, like you are going to be like drawing from like all general aspects of Chinese history. But I do think they look good. I mean, unless you're an art director, it's really hard to like go in and say, oh yeah, this is like, I think this should be this, right? It's just in general, it looks good and it fits, honestly. Especially since they seem to be mostly going for Tang Dynasty or after, which is like for reference, which is about 1,000 years ago. It's like Tang Dynasty to Ming Dynasty designs, which is about 1,000 to like 1,500, 600, that period of time. So it's a good 600-700 years. They're going, and it's a good span of time to reference because they are some of the longer standing dynasties, and they have, in terms of historical dramas, unless you're talking about like Han, unless you're talking about the Three Kingdoms, like a lot of Chinese people would be fairly familiar with those designs because in pop culture, those designs are typically represented more than a lot of the older designs, unless you're talking about Free Kingdoms, which is like way older and a lot of people know about it. But like if you're talking about non-Free Kingdom stuff, those references would be pretty apparent to most people with a working knowledge of Chinese pop culture.
Awesome. What do you think about the shooting units? So Cathay seems to have a big thing for rockets.
Oh,
which
they do.
obviously seems very inspired by China being the inventors of the fireworks, and kind of like Warhammerifying those to be weapons. So it's like, instead of fireworks, we have shoulder-mounted rocket launchers.
Those are
and-
actually not that far off from like historical Chinese
Really?
firearm. Yes. Chinese firearms sort of developed in a different way than Western firearms did for a good while. They used a lot of explosives and like
Love it.
fire instead of like bullets. I am not 100% sure why. I don't think anybody could 100% tell you why.
Because explosions are cool.
But explosions
cool.
So
They are cool.
There are lots of historical instances of explosive Chinese firearms. If you look back at like classical firearm manuals like the Huolongjing, you're going to find a lot of those. Like for example, one of the earliest firearms in Chinese history was the fire lance, which is basically a spear with like an explosive grenade launcher bit attached to the tip. So you exploded.
That sounds amazing.
When enemies charge you, you explode them in the face and then you stab them. And rockets are rockets and explosive. Like they even had like landmines during like the Mongol invasions. Like they the Chinese used a lot of explosives.
Damn. All right.
Yeah, and if we take a look at the range units shown in the Cathayan trailer, they seem to be mostly inspired by Ming Dynasty armor designs, which make a lot of sense because the Ming Dynasty did use a good amount of ranged and firearms, and they did develop more into using like muskets and like bullet weapons as well. So it does fit the aesthetic and historical reference, I believe.
Yeah, something I also noticed that I think I personally really, really appreciate, I don't know how accurate it is, but I actually really like that they seem to have put a lot of detail in showing that Cathay has developed a different form of gunpowder shot technology. In that in the West, for the Empire, they have like flintlock firearms. So they have the ones where they pull the trigger and the little thing kicks back to create a spark and it fires. And they reload differently. In Cathay, all the thing we've seen, it's like bolt action. Like we see them shooting. They have these super long barreled guns. Like all of the black powder guns I've seen, like the actual like bullet shooters are long rifles.
Oh, Giselles? They had like those Giselles with.
Yeah, they have Giselles, which does line up with the older lore, because we know the Skaven stole a substantial amount of their technology from Cathay. Like the Skaven Giselle is a design the Skaven took from somewhere in the east. So it seems they took that from Cathay. And we also have seen the war lanterns, which we'll talk about those in a minute. But there are women up there that have guns, and in the trailer, I'll show a clip here just a second.
Wait, didn't Giselles come from Araby?
Maybe maybe the older lore, but they might have transposed that. I'm not sure.
The thing with that was, I think, old Araby lore they traded with Ind, which may have gotten it from Cathay, because things go missing.
It's vague.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if y'all take a quick look at my stream here, the clip that I have pulled up is of the Cathay trailer, and we have this lady here in the back right who's about to fire one of these super duper duper long barreled guns from the balloon, and she fires, and we actually see her do that bolt action reload, which makes it actually substantially different from anything that the Empire has, which I just think is a really, really cool way. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if that's like the way Chinese firearms seem to work.
There are historical examples of similar designs. Let me actually, the guys in the Kuresh chat just sent me an example here. I'm sending it to you right now. So, like there are
look at that.
examples of similar designs. Yeah.
Yeah, look, Giselles.
Oh, 1 second.
It's in the group chat.
No, I mean, I'm getting spammed by another one of those sex bots again.
Oh yeah, those are fun.
So
that's awesome.
the Ming Dynasty, like they had like like they had like shields like that, and like there were like weapon systems like that historically in Chinese history. So
Awesome. So I guess that's a perfect jumping point to talk about I'm right now I'm calling them lantern war balloons. I don't think that's going to be their official name, but
I have no idea what they're called. Yeah.
Those were very unexpected, at least for me. A very cool design,
Me too.
but caught me off guard.
Same. Actually, okay. I did think of a flying unit for Cathay when I was doing my designs. Let me send my version to you now. My conception was more of a flying. Do you know junks, like Chinese junks?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what they call the traditional Chinese sailboats. So like mine was basically like a flying junk barge thing. I mean, I did obviously take some inspiration from like the Thunder Barge, but yeah, it was basically a flying junk.
No flying ships until the dwarves get one, please.
Yeah,
like-
the dwarf players would hit me. Yeah, so I based my designs off like the Zhenghe. Like there were, if you guys know, there was like a Ming Dynasty admiral that like sailed like really far, like all the way to like Africa or something, in like giant ships, and I sort of took that whole design and made it into like a big airship. So.
Well, that's,
I mean, it looks
That
great.
was my personal conception of that, yes. So yeah, the lanterns did take me off guard as well.
Do you like them? Hate them?
Okay. It's culturally they do look appropriate, but as a concept artist, I feel like they look a bit fragile / clumsy because they are heavily based off like traditional Chinese lanterns, right? We have these like wait, are they Kongmingdeng? Wait, let me check if I'm talking about the right type of lantern. So do you guys play Free Kingdoms?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So do you guys know Zhuge Liang, right? Yeah. So like he was purported to invent like flying lanterns, which are they fly based off hot air, obviously, and they just like candles burning in them. So I mean they're not particularly complex, but like China has like a long history of having like actual flying lanterns. But all these lanterns are built out of paper, and like sometimes they use like bamboo sticks or like wood frames, but they are traditionally pretty fragile because they are built out of paper.
Yeah.
So to me, like when I saw them, I was like, this is a cool design. But like when I saw them starting being used in the battle, right? When I saw them, I thought they were going to be like background sort of like assets, and then I saw them being used up close in battle, and I was like, those look a bit too fragile to be in combat, don't they? Like if you just like puncture it once, you probably would go down. So
yeah.
it looked cool. I do like them a lot, but like I just feel like they look a little bit clumsy and fragile, which could be what they're going for. To be fair.
Presumably they're made out of like some fantasy paper that's tougher than steel or some nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you know, in real life, we have used like war balloons and zeppelins and stuff, which to me make no sense whatsoever because I look at them and like, why? You know, I'll just throw something at it and it'll break.
I mean, they were used in like what World War One when like
World War One we had war
air
balloons
support. So I mean, like you didn't have as many planes, so they wouldn't go down as regular. Guess.
Yeah, it is kind of funny to be like, yes, we're going up against the most flying air superiority demonic race in existence. What are we using? Lanterns, paper.
They have flamers. They literally have flamers.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of the maybe. I'm curious if there is going to be any lore behind it, or if they're just going to be like, it's fantasy. Shut up.
Yeah, like they do look cool. I mean.
We get that in lore, though.
They look appropriate and they look cool. It's just like they look a bit fragile.
That's true. I mean, put me in a room with anyone else and try and let me convince them that the Scourge Runner Chariot or the Lothern Skycutter makes any sense, and it'd be a very similar discussion.
Look, it's Warhammer. None of it makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, don't worry about it. Just shut up and have fun.
It does look cool. So, I mean, I have no real complaints. If it's in a game like that, I'm absolutely fine with it. It looks very cool.
Someone just mentioned in my chat there, it's like, it could just be magic warding, which...
It could be.
I mean, Cathay is a magically superior empire. Like, they're one of the... They're up there with, like, the elves.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, in terms of design, they look cool. I like them. Yeah. I mean, apart from what we talked about, no real complaints.
Any questions, Nathan?
No, so far, no.
Do you have any thoughts on the lores from what little bits we know about them so far? So we know they're alchemists and astronomers, which seem to be the name of the lore of Yin and the lore of Yang casters. And it looks like I'm assuming it's the lore of Yin we see in the trailer, which is like the almost like calligraphy strokes that are made out of darkness or metal or something.
That is what I would assume as well, because I'm sure you guys have done a little bit of your own research. So Yin and Yang are the light and the dark, right? So Yin is the dark, and Yang is the light. So if you're taking those as magic visuals, yeah, Yin is probably the one that's gonna look dark and metallic. Yang is probably gonna be all flashy and explosive and glowy.
Okay, fair enough. And how do you feel about the dragons? The humans turning into dragons and how the dragons have turned out. We've seen two of them so far, the two legendary lords. Are you pleased with their designs, the Iron Dragon and the Storm Dragon?
Yes. Okay. Well, obviously, in traditional Chinese folklore, dragons are they govern water. They're a water creature. So the fire dragon is if you're going from a traditional perspective, it's a little bit, are you sure you can do that? But it is Warhammer, so it is you have to make concessions for it. So, but apart from that, I think I do quite like how they've gone for a blend between Eastern dragons and what dragons look like in Warhammer. I think they've struck a pretty good balance in making them having a Eastern look while still not going fully into the Chinese dragon thing with whiskers and five or more than four legs, and they're they've struck a good balance is what I'm saying. I am interested to see how large the variation of Cathayan dragons will actually be. Will we actually have dragons as units, or are we only getting dragons as legendary lords? I feel like that's a pretty good question, because then we'll have to see what the range of normal dragons look like versus what the dragons descended from the Dragon Emperor look like. But in general, you can sort of see where. Let me find the concept art for concept art, right? Yeah, so you can see that they're going for a more serpentine shape, right? Which is obviously a great element that they're taking from Chinese dragons, and they're doing the whole floating thing instead of having flapping wings like Western dragons. But their snout and head design is much more Western inspired than Chinese inspired, which I think is a necessary, concession you would have to make. And they have lessened amount of whiskers and manes. They do have them, but it's not as prominent as you would see in a traditional depiction of Chinese dragons. So I think it does strike a good balance between Eastern and Western aesthetics, considering the context of it being in a Warhammer setting.
Awesome. And something I saw on Reddit that I was curious if you had an opinion on. So apparently in Chinese mythology, or at least at some point, there were four big guardians or creatures.
The auspicious beasts or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and there's a theory going around that the legendary lords of Cathay, or at least like the big dragons that we'll see in the game, are based on this because of the coloration of Miao Ying and Zhao Ming, or
Mhm.
in that they seem to line up with that.
Right. They're called the 四象 or 四神兽. So like the 4 auspicious beasts or the 4 symbols. So they're basically they have multiple cultural connotations, like a lot of things in Chinese folklore does. So basically, like you guys know, they are 4 different beasts, and they have like they represent the 4 different directions. But they also have like other cultural connotations, including the 4 seasons, and like they have like different temperaments, and they have like different symbology behind them, and different elements. So like I said, there are 5 traditional Chinese elements. So each of them represent 4 elements, and there is actually a 5th beast, which is sort of like, which is like the yellow dragon, which is like in the center of the 4 beasts. That is sort of like he makes things go round, right? So each of them represent a different Chinese element as well. And I think that it would be yeah, I like, considering what we've seen so far, it does completely make sense that they would at least use the colors, I think, as sort of the symbology to symbolize each of the dragons, if they do go for like 4 dragons in each direction. And it does make sense if you look at it from a symbology angle, because, for example, Miao Ying right now in the north is black, right? And
Yeah.
and her direction would be the black tortoise, and the black tortoises, the theme around it is that it's like winter, and it's abiding, and it's sort of like a protective, long living, abiding sort of like symbol. And yeah, like if you look at her role in terms of protecting Cathay, that does seem to suit her. So yeah, I think it's a good interpretation of how they might be theming each dragon if they do eventually look at all 4 different directions.
Well, it's likely we will, because we've got the northern and the western, and it just makes no sense not to add in an eventual southern and eastern.
Ah, here is where some of the stuff we've talked about with my other collaborators on the Kuresh project come into play. So we were discussing like what they could do with the other directions. So, but what we were thinking was that the green dragon being in the east, would be likely to come into play if they ever do Nippon, or if they have like high elf or dark elves coming from the east over the sea,
Dealing
or
with a
if they,
threat.
yeah, dealing with like
Ah.
oversea threats, or they could have the East Dragon be naval focused and going overseas to invade other areas of the world. So like in that way, you could get like Cathayan expeditions to Lustria, and that would be pretty
Not
interesting.
last year, not last year. Suggest
Look,
anything
just-
else.
You know,
Cathayan Lustriable.
When you're finished, I have a funny story about that.
Oh, sure. And we were saying that because we work on Kuresh, if they want to put a self dragon, that would probably be one. If Kuresh wasn't in there, that would probably be a pretty safe area, because there aren't any, as we know, like it would probably just be like chaos into the south if we're talking about like the southern chaos wastes. But if we put Kuresh in there, there would be a lot more stuff to play around with if you have a southern dragon campaign, and that would be very interesting. So, like in terms of like what we could see eventually, if we do see the other dragons, it does open up possibilities for a lot more other factions that could be introduced to introduce like more diverse gameplay than just like what we've already seen before.
So, the funny story I wanted to mention is that actually, if you go back to 5th edition, there was an incident where Cathay.
Oh, where they got blown to Yeah, they got
Yeah,
blown
they
off.
had a really bad time in Lustria. they
weren't they originally going for the Southlands, and then
they were. So
blown
it
off.
was when Cathay discovered that the world was Cathay knew the world was round. They did not know that there was another set of continents between them and the Southlands. They hadn't discovered Lustria yet because they just thought they were the same. Because they're like, oh, jungles with dinosaurs. So, which, you know, understandable. So when you can't see from space. So the Emperor sent an invasion to the west and an invasion to the east to land on both sides of the Southlands so they could meet in the center and conquer the continent. But, of course, the invasion that went to the Southlands got utterly obliterated because the Slans saw them coming and were like, hurricane. And the force that went to Lustria made it to Lustria, but they were on a continent and they were fighting their way towards the center to meet up with their allies who, of course, weren't there. And they realized during the invasion it was a different continent. They were like, ah, shit. One guy made it home. One guy.
I heard that guy is a badass.
Yeah, he is. The Emperor was so pleased with him. I believe he served the rest of his life. Yeah, I probably won't pronounce it right, but it was Yin Tuan was the guy who survived.
Let me look that up. I mean, they probably don't have like actual Chinese characters for it, so I guess you can.
Oh, Games Workshop? No. no, not back then.
They actually did a pretty good job translating like the names they have for like the Chaos Gods and the Cathay and Dragon characters that they have so far into Chinese, though. Not bad.
Oh yeah, do their names like correlate to any historical figure? Do they mean something special? The legendary
they do
lords?
mean something. They don't correlate to historical figures, but they do make sense for who they are. Let me look up. Wait, let me check what they. So number one, who you like Miao Ying is what it translates to is like mystical / miraculous shadow. So it does fit her look. And then
wait, you're telling me it doesn't translate to MILF? Come on.
I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm not gonna
Sorry. It's a stupid joke. I'm done. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then Zhao Ming literally means like shining bright. Like so it fits with him being a fire dragon. So like that's not a bad interpretation of the Chinese character.
Awesome. Man, I'm so curious about his madness. I really hope.
I really like the look of the character.
I really want him to be a little unhinged because that just sounds like a lot of fun.
No, and his character design looks like it would play pretty well if he was unhinged. Like, have you seen those eyebrows? He's pretty crazy.
Well, it's not just that, right? Like, because obviously we know in lore that we've got like Cathay has jade and stuff, but he's got that gem on his forehead, and I'm just thinking, is that warpstone?
Yeah. I didn't even think of that. He's got like that would be hilarious if he thought the warpstone was jade and he just had this like he just had this like mind poisoning gem right there.
Wow, that would be terrible, but also hilarious.
It would explain a lot.
It would.
And it would also make him even a bigger badass that like it's only kind of driving him insane instead of just totally off the deep end.
I mean, he is a descendant of the Dragon Emperor.
Yeah. But do they know what? Yeah, there's no way Cathay does not know what warpstone is. Cathay has been around a long time.
Well, there's a desert.
They dealt with Skaven before.
Yeah, they have. Cathay has boogied with them. I will say I'm glad. I'm gonna keep us pressing forward. So. Based on things we talked about, one thing is with your mention of the yellow dragon makes me really think and kind of hope that the celestial dragon emperor himself will be either yellow or gold. I presume.
Honestly, probably because if you look at so basically, gold dragons were the symbol of the emperor and the imperial family. Like only.
Okay, so that seems like a given. Okay.
Only the emperor was allowed to use like the symbol of the dragon and the golden dragon specific. Yeah.
So do y'all think that the other two dragons, presuming they're there and alive, do y'all think they'll be like the DLC characters, or do you think they're gonna like have them there as like regular characters that you can confederate and then have the DLC? Because like we know everybody and their mother wants the Monkey King. Yeah, a lot of people really want the Monkey King.
Yeah.
but he's probably not a guardian of the East or South. He's probably going to be causing a ruckus because that's his whole thing.
Probably.
So do y'all have any thoughts on how they might handle the other two cardinal directions? Because I'm almost thinking they'll be like
yes.
unique models, but not legendary lords.
That is also what I'm leaning towards, because if you keep releasing legendary lords, I mean, everybody loves dragons and hot dragons, obviously, but if you just keep releasing more dragons as the DLC characters for Cathay, it could get stale for a good amount of people. Personally, I am leaning towards them being like unique models, but not necessarily playable legendary lords, and then them trying to go for like a more diverse themes in terms of Cathayan characters for the DLC characters that you have to pay for.
I don't know, man, because the thing is, the dragons are cool, and people are going to want them anyway.
Yes.
Cool factor is a big thing.
Yeah, I will argue, though, bears were cool, too. And a lot of people feel they jumped the sharks with the bears.
No, yeah, but that's because they just really milked it. But keep in mind that, like, say, for example, as for the Empire, many of us just want every single elect account, and let's be honest, there's nothing really too special about, like, the grand majority of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, what are your other options, right? Like, your other options are like wizard.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're the Empire. I mean, like, Cathay is like way more high magic than the Empire, so you can go more wild with Cathay.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I really hope Cathay gets at least one legendary lord who is a human, like just a guy who has like a really interesting position, just to give them that option.
Right.
And then of course you got the Monkey King. You gotta get the Monkey King.
So over in the Kuresh group, we were discussing this as well earlier, and we had a few ideas for different legendary lords that you could do with based off Chinese mythology and Chinese history. And one idea that I personally came up with and that I personally like would be so we have seen mentions of celestial dragon monks, but we have not seen them revealed yet. So if we don't get them on release, personally, I think it could be cool, because obviously the Dragon Emperor won't be playable. But then that means that the middle of Cathay would not technically have a playable faction if we don't have a legendary lord in there. So my idea for that was that you could have a abbot of the celestial dragon monks, right? Sort of like do like a Shaolin sort of like military order of monks, and then you have like their abbot heading up like the order of monks and like maybe overseeing like the central Cathayan security or whatever for like the in the name of the Dragon Emperor, and he could be in the middle as a normal human, but also having power as like a disciple of the dragon.
That would be super cool.
An administrator, in a sense.
Yeah, administrator and religious sort, like religious leader.
Yeah, but also like
spiritual.
literally like the kung fu master.
Yes, exactly. And
or Shaolin.
And we can. That allows Games Workshop and CA to bring in a lot of like the kung fu and monk stuff that could be really fun. For example, the Shaolin Temple has like these like mythological like fighters, like the 18 bronze men are like a cultural thing that is associated with the Shaolin Temple, and it could be super cool to have like bronze monk warriors fighting for the temple.
That actually sounds really cool. Yeah,
It's not bronze. Sorry, my bad.
I'm very excited because we have to get the Celestial Dragon monks at some point, because they're like one of the only things that Games Workshop was good about actually establishing from Cathay. And
they're kung fu monks. Who doesn't want kung fu monks?
Yeah, you gotta have kung fu, and then hopefully the Monkey King will show up with like I don't know much about like what bestial creatures exist in Chinese mythology. I'm sure there are many, but the Sun Wukong, I am assuming they would just call him Sun Wukong, because some characters in fantasy have direct rips of names.
Yes, but that is also a little obvious. I mean,
do you think they should spice it up? Because like for Kostaltin is literally just Rasputin. They just changed a few letters, but they kept, I don't know the word for it, but like the way a word sounds when you pronounce it, they kept it similar enough to Rasputin that it's identifiable.
I mean, yeah, you immediately see it. It's like, oh, it's Rasputin. Obviously, everybody knows it. But like, Sun Wukong is literally his name. I mean, they must mix it up a little. I mean, I am okay with it either way, personally. But
there's...
go for it.
Someone in chat said, one Song Kong.
Oh my god.
There's the whole thing with Games Workshop when it came to anything for Warhammer Fantasy. It's they're not creative.
They're not very creative. Look, it's literally called Cathay. I'm gonna point out, like, Hong Kong's like, whenever I try to search for like Cathay and stuff, like Hong Kong's biggest airline company is called Cathay Pacific. So
yeah, well, come on, Nippon is the Japan equivalent. Like, they really tried with that one.
Oh yeah, and Araby and Ind. Yeah, I wonder where those are.
It's the case that it was actually designed originally to be a historical game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they're like, sometimes they tried, and sometimes not so much. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with Sun Wukong, because they don't tend to do an exact 1-to-1, where it's like, it's not Martin Luther, it's Luther Huss. It's not Christopher Columbus, it's Marco Colombo.
Yes,
like, it's recognizable, but it's a little different.
Colombo is actually the real name, not Columbus.
Yeah. But on the other hand, if you just go like the Monkey King, it is sort of vague enough that you could get away without changing much, as like a sort of a title instead of like a direct name.
True. Oh yeah. Instead of Julius Caesar, we got Curious Geezer, which was awful. That was so bad.
I think it's wonderful.
Okay, great. Is there anything else we haven't really talked about with Cathay?
Do you want to keep talking about like potential other legendary lords, because we had like
yes, please. Well. If you have any thoughts on that, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, go for it. So like I mentioned, there was like that Ming Dynasty admiral that sailed all the way across the world, called Zheng He, and that could make for a very interesting sort of like naval based Cathayan expedition to the Southlands instead of Lestria from like the other way around. So like, because historically he went like across the coastline of like Asia all the way, like just like following the coastline all the way over to Africa. So like he would probably be going to the Southlands instead of Lestria. So if you want to have like overseas Cathayan factions, that could definitely be an interesting thing to go for. So like sort of like an emissary.
That would be super cool.
Like sort of like emissary trying to like bring gifts and like make diplomatic connections with like the people in the Southlands. Well, probably the Tomb King, honestly, and Araby if they ever make it in, something like that.
They better
believe.
So yeah, that could definitely be an interesting start position for Cathayan Lord. Other ideas?
So we've got Admiral that travels the world. We've got the leader of the monks. And we've got the Monkey King so far.
Another idea we have is, do you know about China's pirate queen?
I have heard of her. She got really popular in America. There was a thing that happened that she got super popular for a hot minute.
The internet thing. Memes and whatever. So like having like a pirate queen faction could also potentially be really fun. So like just having like marauding across the coastlines, fighting like various elves. Like if Nippon makes it in, then they could also invade Nippon.
She actually could make a really good opponent if we ever got Sea Lord Iceland, of like this Cathayan pirate queen going up against the admiral of the Hio fleet, the Sea Lord, because those two would have beef. They would have big beef.
For sure. That would be really interesting to play with. Another idea that we have are the vampires. So in like they've hinted that like there's old non-canon lore about like jade vampires, and then there's like rumors that like they're one of the, I forget exactly which, but there was like one of the vampires from
one of the original vampires. There were 7. wait, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there were 7. One of the original vampires did go to Cathay. That's 100% canon. We don't know, and a lot of people call them the Jade Vampires. I don't think that's their official name, but that's kind of the cultural, or that's the community name.
Look,
for
I
them.
designed them as Jade Vampires, and Ming designed them as Jade Vampires.
You're probably yeah. I'm pretty sure y'all's art on Reddit is why everybody calls them that now.
Yeah.
It's just a cool name. Let's be real.
It is. It is a cool name.
But watch them never get added in for Helmengorst 2.
Yeah, look, it'll be way better than Helmut Gorst.
Helmengorst, except for he's on he's got like zombie oxen pulling his corpse cart instead of regular zombies. That's his upgrade.
Sure, why not? But yeah, so you could do a lot of Jade Vampires because, like, in Chinese mythology / folklore, vampires are not like vampires as like Westerners know them. They suck your chi, so like they directly suck your energy, instead of like they suck your life force instead of blood. I mean, they don't. Okay, so we don't have like vampires as in like Western vampires, like what we modern conceive as like Chinese vampires were originally sort of like hopping zombies, and they were like just like bodies of like this deceased that could not be buried, and then they hired like sorcerers to hop like the corpses back home, and then so they were like sort of like animated undead. And then over time in popular culture, with like conceptions of like Western vampires filtering in, they sort of took that undead idea and then built them into like Chinese vampires that would suck your energy instead of your blood. So like you could do like a whole different sort of like style and aesthetic with them relative to like what we see from like the vampire counts.
Yeah, I actually would love them as like a really unique expansion to the vampire counts. Like that could make for a really fun addition. But I mean, they could easily fit in with either side. But sure. I would be shocked not to see them make some sort of appearance eventually. Like I could see them just being like, you start up a Cathay campaign, and one of the minor factions you have to deal with is just a group of vampire counts. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of like other cultures that probably won't get like proper representation in Warhammer, we were also thinking like maybe you could do something with like either Korean themed units or like the Nanman themed units, that kind of thing. That could be interesting, but like there's no real lore basis for that. It's just like, oh yeah, if you wanted to go for more diversity, those were aesthetics that you could go down the path of. Otherwise, another personal idea that I personally have that I thought would be interesting would be like a bandit lord, right? You guys probably don't know much about the 4 Chinese classics. So the 4 Chinese literary classics, 2 of them you guys will probably know of. The 2 of them are the Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Journey to the West, and that's where you get the Monkey King from, and that's where you get the Three Kingdoms from. One of the other literary classics is called Water Margin, which sounds sort of weird. I don't know why I have no idea why it's translated as Water Margin. In Chinese, it's called 水浒传. But basically, it's about. So the concept of the story is that they accidentally, in a failed religious ceremony, they accidentally released like 108 like demonic souls into like the mortal realm. And then these souls like started inhabiting people, and then eventually those souls like banded together to become like a bandit kingdom. And then like each of them were like heroes, and they have their own stories and journeys, and then like they do like heroic deeds and lots of interesting things. And I thought that would be actually a really interesting faction to explore in the Total War format. So you could have like a bandit kingdom, and with a heavy focus on heroes and legendary heroes. And so you could play into like sort of like the wuxia. Wait, do you guys know what wuxia is?
No.
So have you guys seen like I mean, you guys have seen like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? Wait, Wu Hu Changlong. Yeah, Hidden Dragon. Yeah.
Yes.
You guys have seen that, right? So basically,
very famous movie.
Yeah,
it's a great movie. You should watch it. It's very famous.
It's a great movie. Please watch it. It's so good. so basically there's an entire genre of like Chinese historical fantasy that are based off these like folklore heroes. And a really big precept of this genre of Chinese historical fantasy is that there is a concept called the jianghu, which is sort of like an underground slash like it's like a martial arts underground world within China that like all of these people have their reputations, and then they have like their different schools of martial arts have like different reputations and masters, and they have their relationships and rivalries and everything, and so like it's like sort of like underground element to the world basically, to society. And it would be an interesting concept if you applied this to Total War and sort of like explored that as like recruiting different heroes from across Cathay and across the world to join your faction as like a bandit lord, and like you could like sort of like expand and like fight like authorities and try to take over it. I just think that would be really interesting as a personal, like I personally I think that'd be super cool.
That sounds a lot like Dogs of War, though, in a sense.
Well, except for their
I mean,
individuals as opposed to like units.
Yeah.
So it would be kind of like the Dogs of War, but instead it's all these different famous heroes you're trying to acquire, as opposed to like units that represent different cultures and different ideas. So like similar but different enough.
Different enough.
Oh, that's awesome! So, like I really love that. Like Cathay just has so much cool shit they can draw upon. It's not, Someone in chat said kind of like a Marcus Wolfart campaign, but probably less like laser focused development on the characters and more just a lot more characters to go after.
In my mind, it would be like you would also have to mix in some like relationship mechanics of like different schools of like martial artists or like other bandits within like the underground. It's like you have maybe mix in some like the high elf like influence stuff, and you can mix in like different elements into that to like spice it up a little bit more.
Yeah, those are some awesome ideas. I would genuinely love to. Like the only thing I feel like they haven't shown off that I need is like a lot more of the kung fu stuff with the dragon monks and stuff. And I gotta have a Monkey King at some point. But after that, like go crazy.
I'm pretty sure the Monkey King is like 100% confirmed to eventually come down. Like that's definitely come.
Yeah, especially just because we know he exists in the Warhammer universe.
Exactly.
Though I heavily suspect that much like a lot of Cathay, when he does come out, his lore will probably be substantially different than his old version. Because his old version, he was much more of like a genuine villain.
And he was dealing with like Skaven and
he was like a Skaven ally. Which
I see no problem with that, but you know,
like if there's one thing I'm really glad they did not do. My biggest fear with Cathay was that they were going to keep them closer to their older lore, which was that Cathay's older lore was much more of like, it was a human kingdom, but it had a lot of what are considered evil races running, like pulling a lot of strings in the background. So like Tzeentch was basically like a acknowledged part of the culture. Like Tzeentch had cabals in Cathay that like wielded a lot of authority and power. And they were just like, it was almost like you couldn't tell if Cathay was a Tzeentchian empire or if they were an order empire that just fought with chaos, but like Tzeentch was like heavily involved. There was a lot of Skaven stuff in there. I am glad that they kind of pulled back from that and have allowed Cathay to just be a human and dragon nation that is an order faction. Like they are extremely opposed to Tzeentch as opposed to pawns in the scheme of things.
Yeah, I am glad that happened as well.
Like some people wanted it. Like I knew quite a few people that wanted like a Tzeentchian character as part of Cathay, and I'm really glad we did not go that route.
See,
yeah, me too.
I like the idea of having a because they did mention a former Tzeentchian Cathayan character when they first started hinting towards Cathay.
Games Workshop did,
yeah. And I like the idea of having that because that means that you can have an evil character. Like we have had an evil character for the Empire, and we have had multiple evil characters for Bretonia because fuck knows what the hell's happening in there.
Bretonia has problems.
But like I like the idea of that because then you have the contrast of it. Because if it's anything that is very, very obvious in Warhammer, it's when the human faction is introduced. We're still human, and we're very susceptible to corruption.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, I'm totally fine with if you're playing a Cathay campaign, like you get events where like, hey, a Tzeentchian cult's been discovered, and you've got to like an army pops up and you got to go kill them, or
That's just
like
how chaos works. So
yeah, that's just how chaos works. The thing I did not want was like one of your big playable legendary lords is a genuine Tzeentchian cultist. That is the thing I did not want. Like if you're gonna have like a Tzeentchian mortal, then it should be a famous Tzeentch character who is, invading or doing shenanigans elsewhere. It should not be a Cathay character who is also a Tzeentch villain. See, like if we want like an Archon the Black type Cathayan character, so like a Cathayan character who is not necessarily sympathetic to Cathay but uses a lot of the same units and all that stuff, I think we'd have a much easier time with like the Pirate Queen or a Bandit King or even like the Monkey King. The Monkey King is typically a very bombastic individual who's not necessarily the most reliable ally, seeing as I think in the original story they had to force him to cooperate with that thing he wears.
Well, I don't know. Like, yeah. I'd see the Monkey King as kind of like a weird neutral.
Anti-hero.
Yeah. Like, very neutral in a sense. Like,
well, he starts out as absolute chaotic neutral, right? He does basically whatever the hell he wants, regardless of what heaven or mortals want. And then Buddha saddles him with like a Buddha's master and basically tries to teach him morals. And at the end of the story, he learns to be a better version of himself.
Like, I would love to see them repeat that dynamic, but it's the Celestial Dragon Emperor having to deal with Sun Wukong. Because I think there could actually be some really funny shit happening.
Not even the Jade Emperor could stop the Monkey King in Journey to the West. Like,
I really hope Sun Wukong is just, like, doesn't have, like obviously he would probably have some cool abilities for illusions and stuff, because I believe he was really big into illusion type, like, we would call it magic.
Have you guys seen the trailers for Black Myth Wukong?
No.
I will send it to you later, but basically there's like a Chinese indie studio. They're making like a really, really good looking game based on the Monkey King and Journey to the West. And it looks like absolutely amazing. Like, even from a AAA perspective, it looks great. I'll link it to you in a bit. But so part of the mechanic in that game that they've showed off is that so if I'm remembering right, Sun Wukong has bosses or Bian or something like that. He has like a ton of transformations. I don't remember exactly how many transformations, but he can shapeshift like a ton. Like, he has like a multiple forms, and he can turn himself big and small, and he can turn to different objects or creatures. So he is like a full blown shapeshifter.
So it's not like it's not that he like uses magic. He's not like a wizard per se, but he can change his body and shapeshift.
Like I said, Chinese magic is more about inner energy than like casting spells. So in the Chinese magic sense, he is magic. I mean, he does a lot of like su, which I guess like the closest translation would be spells. So like he has like different like abilities. Like, for example, he can like pull his hairs and turn them into clones of him, and that's where Naruto gets it.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's where Naruto gets like his clone jutsu, whatever thing. I haven't seen Naruto, but yeah, I know he can make clones of himself, and that's where
he would just be badass as hell. Like, I don't know if I don't think he would be a wizard character, but just a heavy combat character that has just a bunch of crazy abilities.
Oh, definitely.
But I think we're actually like struggling on time, so let's actually go ahead and move on.
Sure.
As much as I would love to just keep going on this, because this is a blast. Nathan, do you have any final questions or things about Cathay? Anything?
I don't know. Someone mentioned something here which could be kind of interesting, and it's disappeared. Let me just scroll up. Carry on whilst I try, because it was actually kind of interesting.
Okay, so while he's looking that up, Ryu, why don't you talk to us about what you've been working on? Like, most people listening are probably familiar with your work on Reddit, right. If not other places. But you and your team have been really, really busy in Warhammer, creating a lot of ideas, and we love to kind of like give you just a spotlight here to talk about that. and like where people can find it, what kind of stuff you're working on, what's been the process, how it's all going.
Let me get you our main lore page. So, to give a quick introduction, basically, our team, we have 4 guys. We have me and Ming, Furious Ming, as concept artists, and then we have our 2 lore writers, and basically, it's a collaborative project in which we're designing the hinterlands of Kuresh as a full-fledged faction, and we are writing lore and we are creating concept art. So we have like entire lore articles and blurbs, which are like sort of like written like army book introductions, and we have concept art of those units and characters, which are designed, which are drawn in the style of Creative Assembly's Total War concept art for Warhammer. Let me link you to our main lore page. So we set up a world anvil with all our released art and lore articles where you can go to find all the stuff we've released. And you can see like we have like origins and background of Kuresh, and we have like an army list of like where you can see all the currently released stuff that we have. And we put out new lore and designs every couple weeks on average. Like if we get busy, sometimes there are delays, but typically we aim for every 2 weeks. Actually, we literally just released a new article today, 2.5 hours ago, on the Total War Reddit, and our new post today should be the spec. I'll have to ask our lore guys how to pronounce that, but it should be the spec prowler, which are like primordial shadow spirits / abominations that stalk and kill people, and they can teleport, and they're terrifying monsters based off like traditional Southeast Asian shadow puppets. I actually have a puppet somewhere, but I have no idea where it is.
They do look pretty terrifying.
Yep. Well, I mean, if you show them in the right light, they are absolutely terrifying. But they are also very intricate and very beautiful. I think Furious Ming did a great job, getting that aesthetic in there. So, would you like me to give like a brief overview of what our conception of Kuresh would be like?
Sure, if you'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go for it. So basically, so as briefly mentioned every once in a while in Warhammer lore, Kuresh has snakemen, right? So we basically took that concept and rolled with it. So in our lore, the Naga and snakemen of Kuresh are older creations of the old ones. So they were made after, I believe, after the lizardmen as another supplemental race to help to like assist them in their scientific and experimental endeavors. But the old ones focus very like in lore, the old ones focused a lot on the lizardmen as the caretakers and protectors and like servants, right? So the snakemen and Naga essentially felt neglected and forgotten by the old ones, so they grew resentful, and basically that sort of twisted them into these like monsters that have like a thirst for scientific knowledge and like promoting their own well-being before all others, because they didn't get attention that they wanted. So now they're gonna take over, and they're evil. And in our lore, basically, when the Great Chaos Invasion, right before the Great Chaos Invasion, the Snakemen revolted and actually killed the Slan and Lizardmen within Kuresh, and that's how you get the lost city of the Slan, right smack in the middle of Kuresh, because they killed all the Slan there, and then they took it over for their own and used it as a capital city, and they wanted to wage war against all the Lizardmen. And right before the Chaos Invasion started, the Lizardmen were mustering their armies in order to invade Kuresh and take it back for the Old Ones. But unfortunately, the Great Chaos Invasion happened, and it screwed everything up. And basically, the Lizardmen were really busy dealing with demons, so the Meanwhile, the Naga and the Snakemen were left to deal with sort of like their own civilization and own culture, while like all the insanity that chaos is bringing happened around them, and they made like pacts with like the chaos gods. While they didn't pledge themselves to chaos gods, they made pacts with demons and like delved into like dark magic and started experimenting on mortals and doing twisted experiments and magic in order to like both to survive and to like elevate their position and power. And basically that's where our Naga come from, right? So in the current in the like our current lore, they've become these twisted monsters that basically treat all other races like cattle and fodder for them as experiments or slaves. And they are heavily focused on like recreate on so each different sect of Naga have like their great question that they have like instead of like the great plan that the lizardmen have to uncover, they have the great experiment. But none of the sects can agree on what the great experiment is, so they all have like their own ideas of what they want to do and how they want to research and develop their cultures and their technology and their magic. And so that's how you can get like differing factions and differing ethos in the different Naga factions. And they're basically evil slave experimenters now. And we think that's a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, I've been
Lost City of the Old Ones, not the Lost City of Slan. Sorry, my bad.
You're all good. I've been showing off the all of the designs and stuff as we've been working, listening to you, and I really love the design. Like there's just so much cool stuff to look at, and y'all have taken a really interesting direction with it. There's I almost want to describe them as something that I thought was really clever about the way y'all decided to go with it. Is they almost they share a lot of similarities with the Chaos Dwarfs, but they come off very much as a more biological and like mutating the natural world, and like customizing the natural world as opposed to like mechanics and industry like the Chaos Dwarfs do.
Yes, that's a very heavy theme with them. Basically, they, like I said, they see everything in the world as like their playthings, so they want to twist what the old ones left and make it their own through like vile science and like dark magics, and just like twist whatever they see in the natural world into fitting into their vision and to serve their purposes.
Man, I would not want to fight the higher specs, my lord.
No.
That thing is nasty.
No. Like literally, like I believe in the lore that they can drive people insane, like just by like looking or being near them.
They've got Jabberslith condition.
Yes. Also, they can live basically indefinitely, and the older they are, the larger they are. So like elder Haruspects are like the size of like giants.
Amazing.
So very unpleasant.
Well, thank you very much for sharing this with us. I will make sure that this, along with all of your other... Is there any other projects you've been working on outside of Kuresh?
Are you asking about my personal projects?
I am.
I'm working on a few things. I mean, if you guys, any of you guys know my Warhammer 40k work, I am currently writing up the scripts and developing the next season of Big Brothers. So hope
I love that series. It is so damn funny.
Yeah, I'm hoping to bring the. We should be airing the next season in a month or two. Yeah, so before the year ends, we will start airing the next season. Other from that, I have like a few personal projects. I have like my own setting that I'm working on. That's like I'm playing with like fantasy tropes, and it's like I'm also writing my D&D campaign in it, so I'm basically world building as I DM for my friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I basically took like a bunch of like the D&D races and then like switched them around and played with them. So like for example, like I have instead of dragonborn, I have like Maori lizard people, and they hunt, and then they do like tattoos on their scales, and they hunt monsters. And then my dwarves are like themed Chinese and Tibetan, and then like they have like and they have like terracotta golems because of course they do. And then like I have like Egyptian elves with like giant flying cities, and I'm basically
That
messing
sounds
with like,
badass, dude.
sci-fi and fantasy tropes, and I'm hoping to do a bunch of like character designs for that later. I'm working on like some like 3D environment designs right now. Apart from that, you know, a lot of general things. I always have so many settings and world building projects going on at once. It's sort of hard to cover them all.
Well, awesome. Sounds like you're staying busy.
Yeah, I mean, while I apply for studios, better work on my portfolio.
Well, why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited for the next season of Big Brothers. I'm so glad that's going on. I know they probably wouldn't let you do it, but I'm still in my fan fiction in my head. Kari becomes the first female space marine. Like, she's such a badass, dude.
I have ideas and plans for subsequent series regarding Tari, so we will see where that goes and if they will approve my ideas.
I hope they do. It's awesome. All right. So, Nathan, did you find that thing you were looking for?
Unfortunately not, no. I had like an attack of more sex bots, so unfortunately I had to deal with that.
You're just, it's just your natural musk, dude. They just can't help resist it.
It's the Soneshi charm.
YouTube streaming never change.
It's the Soneshi charm. They knew I was painting up a Soneshi Lord. They know about the tattoo.
All right. And so the last thing to talk about today, which we're just sort of going to announce it. We're not going to get super duper in depth with it because unfortunately, I haven't had the time to dive into it. I might speak more about it next week. Is, for those unaware, the developers behind Warhammer Online Return of Reckoning, which is the private server for Warhammer Online, have actually released their first massive addition to the game, which is that Karazakarak, the capital city of the dwarves, and Karak 8 Peaks, which is the capital and staging ground for the Greenskins in the Warhammer Online timeline, are in the game. They've officially been added, and you can actually go to those places, explore them, visit them. To my understanding, there's like a lot of interesting things to do. They just released it yesterday. So this is super new information. If you have not downloaded that game and you're not playing it, I don't know what you're doing with your time, but you're spending it poorly. You should go check it out. There are instructions. They have a YouTube video up. If you go Google the Return of Reckoning YouTube channel, it's their most recent video that you can watch and see all that stuff. But it's very, very exciting news, and that's a massive accomplishment for them. Those cities were things that were promised to us by the original devs, and as we got closer to release, they realized they couldn't do it because there was supposed to be a capital city for every single race, not just the Empire and Chaos, and all we got was Empire and Chaos. So they have finished that great work, and super duper proud of them, and major accolades to them for accomplishing that. And I can't wait to check it out myself this week, especially because tomorrow is Monday, so I've got dungeons tomorrow. But that is going to be it for us here at Lorebeards today. We are hilariously over time.
I just remembered one thing. I forgot to mention, in terms of personal projects, I'm actually going to do some cafe and concept art as well, going back to it to do like environments. And I'm looking at, I want to do like art of the Celestial City. Floating.
Oh, dude.
Nice.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that. So that's actually a good segue into closing up. Where can people find you? If people are like, holy shit, this Royu guy's awesome, and I want to just follow all his work for the rest of time, which they should, where should they look?
I am under pretty much all major social media. I am under Royu Art. So like I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Tumblr. I also have a Reddit which is my it has an older username, so it's like Insanity, but like it is an older username, but you can probably see my work on the Total War subreddit, but it'll probably be easier to follow me on my other social media. I also have my portfolio site at chenroyu.com, which is chenruoyu.com, and that's my portfolio site. Otherwise, like if you just if you just Google Royu, I will pop up. Like I am possibly the most famous Royu in the world right now.
An important accolade.
Yes. The nice thing
And
about
well
having a Chinese name is that there is not as much competition for website URLs.
I posted those links in chat for anyone who wants to get them, and of course, just to do it one more time for anyone that's listening in this in a podcast format, you can find him at chenruoyu.com. So be sure to check him out. Do you still accept commissions for anyone that's looking for that?
I do, but I am currently working on a couple of gigs at the same time, so there might be delays.
Okay, so for anyone that, if you haven't seen, he's actually on a commission for me. He's amazing to work with. The Quake piece turned out absolutely incredible, so I cannot recommend anyone better, genuinely. If someone just is like, I want a ridiculous, super sexy piece of something, that's a great person to go to. Nathan. Yeah. And one day I'll use that art for its intended purpose. Actually, I guess we'll finish up. Ryo, any closing thoughts or things as we're signing off here?
I think we covered pretty much everything.
Great. And thank you so much for coming by the way.
Of course. No problem.
I know all three of us are in wildly different time zones.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate
2:47 a.m. right now.
Yeah, we really appreciate you.
My family.
We really appreciate you coming by to answer all of our stupid Western questions and help us get keyed into what's going on.
Of course, no problem.
Nathan, any closing things or things you're up to that you want people to know about as we're signing off?
No, think you're good. I'm like an hour late for the gym.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks for having me on.
Once again, I'm LoremasterOfSotek. Nathan, Great Book of Grudges, Royu, you can find at those places. Thank you all so much for coming by. We will be back next week on hopefully Sunday, maybe at the regular time. There is some stuff me and Nathan for Lorebeards may have to deal with that could cause complications, but keep an eye on Twitter for us. And for Lorebeards, keep in mind that is the topic is units. So and it paint a whole unit. Like you don't if you get just one guy done in 2 weeks, that's fine too. But try and get a squad.
As long as it's like a troop, you're fine.
Yeah, and make sure those are submitted on Twitter under #Lorebeards. And that's going to be it for us. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Okay. Bye.
Guys, before I go, just a quick post towards Mercy the Mad. Say hello to him. Obviously, he's a really good friend of the channel. Give him some love. He's currently doing some Clan Scryer science, so you guys are going to enjoy that.